Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like Mr. Israel Vela to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. This is a meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. And I'd like to mention that Director Daniels is excused from tonight's board meeting, and she's unable to be here tonight. Just want to go over a little bit of the process for audience participation this evening. We have a number of cards here, so I wanted to mention the purpose of board meetings is for the board to conduct its business in public, and it's not a public forum. During the meeting, the board will listen to but not respond to comments from visitors. And we are here listening for understanding. So those wishing to comment must complete a comment card and give it to the board secretary before the meeting begins, or no later than agenda item 3.0 under presentations. Abuse of public comments personally directed towards staff members will not be tolerated. And when it's your turn to address the board, please state your name at the start of the testimony. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and you will hear a timer when 3 minutes are up. Visitors who have completed a comment card indicating a desire to speak to an agenda item will be called at that portion of the agenda. And per board procedure, written material to provide board members with background information should be submitted to the superintendent's office at least 1 week in advance of the meeting. And that said, Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda, please?
President Megan Aslam, members of the board, Ms. Halley, community members, and friends, please note a supplemental personnel report was added to the consent agenda, and one sits before you on the dais.
All right. So I would like to ask a board member to make a motion.
I move that we add the supplemental personnel report to tonight's consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right. A motion has been made to attach a supplemental personnel report to our agenda. Are there any discussions or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. All right. We are moving on to 2.0 recognitions, and we'll start with we have several proclamations to read. I would like to call on a board member to read the proclamation for America's Safe Schools Week, please.
Yes, I have that one. I'd be pleased to read that.
All right, thank you.
America's Safe Schools Week. Whereas schools make substantial contributions to the future of America and to the development of our nation's young people as knowledgeable, responsible, and productive citizens, and whereas the National School Safety Center, state governors, and state school superintendents sponsor America's Safe Schools Week the week of October 21st to the 27th, 2018. And whereas excellence in education is dependent on safe, secure, and peaceful school settings, and whereas the safety and well-being of many students, teachers, and school staff are unnecessarily jeopardized by crime and violence such as substance abuse, gangs, bullying, poor discipline, vandalism, and absenteeism in our schools, and whereas it is the responsibility of all citizens to enhance the learning experiences of young people by helping to ensure fair and effective discipline, promote good citizenship, and generally make schools safe and secure. And whereas all leaders, especially those in education, law enforcement, government, and business, should eagerly collaborate with each other and the National School Safety Center, a partnership of the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Education, to focus public attention on school safety and identify, develop, and promote innovative answers to these critical issues. And whereas school safety programs in numerous schools and school districts throughout the country, along with national programs, are among those innovative answers. And whereas the observance of America's Safe Schools Week will substantially promote efforts to provide all our nation's schools with positive and safe learning climates. Now therefore be it resolved, the Kent School District Board of Directors emphasizes the importance of making our schools safe, secure, and peaceful places for learning, teaching, and working, free of drugs, alcohol, weapons, and fear, and proclaims the week of October 21st through the 27th, 2018, America's Safe Schools Week in the Kent School District.
Thank you, Karen. We will invite Mr. Tim Kovich, Safety Services Supervisor, and Commander Andy Grove to accept the proclamations, please.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Board of Directors, President Ankadasalam, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. I wanted to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for the proclamation, but we haven't had the opportunity to formally introduce you to our newest addition to our Kent family, and that is Commander Grove. He, as you remember, Commander Kasner, who left us to join Chief Padilla as an assistant chief there in Kent. And so we are blessed to have Commander Grove with us. So I wanted to formally introduce him today and welcome him. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's welcome Commander Grove. Thank you and welcome. Next, we will discuss the LGBT History Month, and I'd like to call on a board member to read the proclamation, please.
Yes. Whereas LGBT History Month celebrates the achievements of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals, and whereas in 1994, a Missouri high school teacher gathered other teachers and community leaders and selected the month of October to be dedicated to the celebration and teaching of gay and lesbian history, and whereas only 17% of students are taught LGBT history in schools, and whereas LGBT History Month is recognized to remind both the LGBT and wider communities of the important roles LGBT individuals have played in creating the social, legal, and political worlds in which we live. Whereas the Kent School District Board believes in fostering an educational environment that is safe and free of discrimination for all students, regardless of race, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Now therefore be it resolved, the Kent School District Board of Directors recognizes the month of October as LGBT History Month and encourages the discussion of LGBT history in schools and classrooms during that time.
All right. We'd like to invite Amy Hobson. Is Amy here tonight? Oh, hi, Amy. Great. All right. Thank you, Amy, for accepting the proclamation.
As the advisor for our GSA club at Kent Lake High School and helping with the other schools that support our LGBTQ kids and those who love them, I would like to thank you for this honor.
I'd like to ask everyone to stay until after the proclamations are read. We have two more to take some photos, please. The next is our National Physical Therapy Month, and we will call on a board member to read the proclamation, and that, I guess, is me. I will read it. All right. Whereas the Kent School District is committed to supporting students with special needs and providing every student with equal access to education regardless of physical needs, whereas the American Physical Therapy Association recognizes how physical therapists and their assistants improve people's lives by restoring and improving their abilities of movement, and whereas the Kent School District encourages staff, students, and community members to help increase awareness of the benefits of physical therapy during the month of October, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims the month of October as National Physical Therapy Month in the Kent School District and calls upon all citizens and civic organizations to join in the national effort to raise awareness of physical therapy and how therapists and their assistants improve students' access to education. Right. And we'd like to invite Melinda Frosted. I hope I pronounced that right. Kent School District Physical Therapy Lead to accept the proclamation, please.
I just thank you for this, and I ask everyone to continue to embrace neurodiversity. Thank you.
Finally, we have our National Schools Bus Safety Week, and I'd like to call on a board member to read the proclamation, please.
Thank you. Whereas National School Bus Safety Week is an active and evolving public education program, is an excellent way for parents, students, teachers, motorists, school bus operators, school administrators, and community members to join together to address the importance of school bus safety. And whereas the Kent School District buses meet or exceed federal and state regulations and consistently receive a 100% passing score in the annual inspection by the State Patrol, and whereas many students begin and end their day with a school bus ride, approximately 10,000 students are transported daily on 129 routes and 155 school buses traveling approximately 1,763,605 miles each year. And whereas the key to school bus safety lies in qualified, competent, and capable school bus drivers, mechanics, and support staff, whereas this year's theme for the National School Bus Safety Week is My Driver, My Safety Hero, the board recognizes the high caliber of the transportation team and commends the transportation service staff for its exemplary job of safely transporting students. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Kent School District Board of Directors emphasizes the importance of student safety and proclaims the week of October 22nd through the 26th National School Bus Safety Week in the Kent School District.
All right, and we'd like to invite Justin Dennison, Director of Transportation, please, to accept the proclamation.
She's on my wall. With my son. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. Directors of the board, President Vengadassalam, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. On behalf of our 175-member transportation team of drivers, mechanics, and support staff, just want to thank you for honoring National School Bus Safety Week. Thank you.
To ask everyone to come forward for the photos, beginning with, thank you. America's Safe Schools Week, followed by LGBT History Month, and then National Physical Therapy Month and National School Bus Safety Week. Thank you.
We're going to go up front.
Physical therapy.
We're moving on to 3.0, our presentations with our employee retention study plan. And I'd like to call on Ms. Mariah Martin, Chief Human Resources Officer, and Brianna Kemp, Assistant Director for Human Resources, to present and answer questions, please.
You're amazing. Good evening, President Venkatachalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Halley. We're pleased to share with you tonight a continuation of some work that we began to share with you last month when we gave our hiring report. And at that time, we shared with you that we'd like to talk with you about the results of our exit survey. We'd also like to talk with you about our upcoming plans for our stay interviews and surveys. And so really excited to share this year-long plan. And before I forget, I want to make sure that I share with our other presenters. So Brianna Kemp is our Assistant Director for Human Resources, and she'll be sharing and really spearheading the work on the stay interviews. And I would like to just recognize Jacqueline Henley. She'll raise your hand over here. Jacqueline is one of our admin interns, and she wants to do some work at the district office, and she chose HR, and we're so excited. And so she's going to do some work with us on the stay interviews as well. So we are going to be presenting to you a multifaceted approach, and it's interesting, it's an important note to say that we're not talking about doing a strategy right now. This is a study. And the reason is we want to make sure that we listen before we move forward, because we can think of all the reasons that people decide to stay or they decide to leave. But we think it's really, really valuable to hear not only from our employees who leave, but also the ones who are here. And what ideas do they have for us about how we can increase workforce retention? So 2 pieces before we get into our study. One of the things is to recognize first the context. 17-18 was a very challenging year for the Kent School District, as we all know. Not only were we recovering from a $7 million deficit, we had to make decisions personnel-wise, because 85% of our budget is personnel, that were incredibly hard for our staff, incredibly hard for our community. So whether or not it was an actual RIF or a discussion of a RIF, that had a huge impact on how people felt about working at KSD. And we need to recognize that. That's an important context. And that will be the context that we share this data with you. But in addition to that, it's important for us to do a study of our workforce retention just because it's good best practice. It's what we should do as an organization. We need to assess, we need to take the temperature of our staff, and not just the ones who leave. We need to take that temperature and assess while they're with us so that we can continue to think about how can we keep and support you so that we have highly engaged employees. Employee engagement is about listening. When people feel like they have the opportunity to share and they're heard, that is an important part of feeling like you're a valued member of this workforce. And so that's what this whole study is focused on, providing opportunities for us to listen and hear what our workforce has to say. And in essence, say to them, and I'll say it now, your story matters here. Your story matters here in the Kent School District. We want to hear it, and we want to be able to know what it is so that we can set appropriate next steps. So what's next is we are going to present to you some initial contextual data about our workforce, the retention and the attrition, and then we'll get into the 3-pronged plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Bree.
Good evening. So taking a look at our first slide here, providing some context overall, is just a snapshot. Back a slide. of where we are going into the 18-19 school year in terms of attrition and retention. So the green overall identifies the total attrition in by employee group. We did make sure to note that in the light blue categories are employees that are RIF'd, just to get a total picture of where we are. Overall, want to make sure we know that this is a full picture of separations. This is not just voluntary separations, this is not just RIFs, this is also inclusive of temporary assignments, those under leave replacement contracts, things that were set to end at the end of the year as it was. Oh, and also as a snapshot of, we always use October 1 as our date when we're looking at attrition and retention. So any separation between October 2nd of 2017 through September 30th of 2018 is where these separations are coming from. So also important when we're looking at just total number is also our workforce diversity. Something, of course, we want a premier and diverse workforce, so we have to look at those who are leaving as well as those who are staying with our district. Looking at this, like I said, it is a matter of all separations. So we're looking kind of at a worst case scenario picture. This is not just the voluntary separations. This is still inclusive of those employees that were involved in the RIF, as well as those on the leave replacement assignments. When looking at this data, we could say it's overall reflective of our total workforce. We're not seeing anything out of the ordinary in this case. Moving forward, this is a snapshot of where we are now in terms of our workforce diversity. There is an asterisk next to the coaches, as the data we pull here is strictly based on our employee type. Every employee can only be assigned one employee type given our current system, and a good portion of our coaches are part of another bargaining group, so teachers, paraeducators, things of that nature. So, hands back to Mariah.
So that you have a picture of our workforce and our current workforce and the diversity of our current workforce, we begin to think about, okay, what would be an approach that would enable us to meet this goal, to understand why employees stay and why they leave, so that KSD can take strategic steps to keep and support current employees. And so I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on each one of these three. The first, staff climate survey. So the staff climate survey will be given once a year. It will be given in the spring. This work is really coming out of the interest of our Strategic Planning Steering Committee, who spoke to this particular interest, and this is an interest that we share. And so it will be organized by the Organizational Effectiveness Community. It will be sent to all employees in the spring of 2019. It's very important that we emphasize that when we talk about workforce retention, we're talking about all employee groups. That's why we represent the data for all employee groups. We know that all of them are important in the success of our students. So this survey will coincide with the student and family satisfaction surveys that will be sent at the same time of year. It will be an anonymous survey that focuses on the following: staff relationships, perceptions of KSD as a whole, and the work environment. We had a wonderful opportunity yesterday in Cabinet with all of our labor partners represented there to share this presentation with them and really share with them that when we begin to develop this and enroll this, we want their feedback. We want to work together with them to develop this survey, along with the stay interviews and the exit survey pieces as well. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned, I'm very pleased with the willingness of our labor partners to do this work with us. The next piece, if you go to the top of the triangle, the three-pronged approach, is one that we've been doing and want to continue to do, and that is our exit surveys and interviews. So the result period, as Bree just mentioned, is October through September. We had 226 respondents, and we did send the exit survey link to our RIFT employees as well. Many organizations, in fact, most, do not send exit surveys to their terminated or RIFT employees. The reason for that, and Gallup and other organizations have said, it's very clear what they're going to say. Usually they're not leaving because they're choosing to leave. But we felt it was important to get the full picture from our exiting employees. We had a 39% response rate, which is consistent with our previous exit survey data. In fact, it's a little bit higher, and it's actually very high statistically for a sample. We actually broke it down for you by the respondents and their work group. The reason to leave KSD is listed there. Those are pre-populated that they can choose. An improvement that we want to look forward to is people having more than one reason to leave. because you could leave because of your commute, because it's a higher salary, and because it's a promotional opportunity. So we want to make sure that we provide that opportunity. But this reflects a survey that allowed them to choose one opportunity. The next few slides, we're going to walk through the exit survey results with you. Percent of respondents satisfied or very satisfied for all of the major categories are listed here for you. And these are the 8 different aspects of their employment that we asked them about. So I'm going to break it down question by question. How satisfied were you with your salary? If you see dark blue, that means the respondents stated they were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. Light blue, very satisfied and satisfied. We also not only provided the percentage for you, we actually provided the end size number. That's very important when you think about the fact that AFT only had 6 separations. So we wanted to make sure that if we said 100%, well, is that 50 people who left, or is that just 6? Okay. So this is salary. Again, many of these individuals were leaving before we had finished negotiating contracts. It's an important contextual piece to remember as well. Benefits. Top line is summary of all, and then it's broken down by employee work group. Work team. Supervisor. Work environment. Again, the end size number is an important piece to look at, particularly if you're looking at percentages. Professional development. Internal advancement opportunities. And focus and goals of the district. One of the things we began to talk about, and we discussed this at length in cabinet, and I think it's an important thing to mention to you, is that focus and goals of the district is not defined here in this question. It doesn't say the KSD strategic plan. I asked the cabinet members, if I were to ask you what was the focus of the district last year, what would you say it is? It was. And many said, getting us out of the deficit, the budget, reducing staff. So it's important to think about what were people considering when they heard this question. It's not a right or a wrong response. It's just important to think about when we think about the context of the question and the responses we're getting. Again, these are available online. We did attach this to the agenda so anyone can see these slides. So I'd like to invite Bree over to talk about the third prong of this. What we're really excited about that we're going to be implementing this year are the stay interviews.
So I'm quite excited to be spearheading this project because, as we've discussed, exit surveys are a great tool and they do provide us valuable data. It is only half the story. We don't want to only know why people left. We want to know what makes them stay. So when we're looking at exactly what is a stay interview or a stay survey, so it's important to define as, it's a structured discussion a leader conducts with employees to learn the specific actions the organization can take to strengthen the employees' engagement and retention within the organization. Things that are important to remember that it just kind of, more than anything, provides a structure to communicate between the organization and the employees. This is not something that is evaluative. It's not something that's ever going to be used for performance or corrective action purposes. Exit survey is great. They don't provide real-time information, but at that point, the employee has already left. So we would like to hear from the employees that are currently here. What are we doing well? What can we continue doing well? What is not going well? And what can we do to fix that before we have you filling out an exit survey? We'll be rolling this out in a 2-phased approach. It'll overall be organized by the human resources community, but we are looking to reach out to some of our strategic partners, knowing that this is quite a large project. And as we've already spoken with our labor partners and had a lot of great feedback from them moving forward, we're pretty excited overall. The first phase will be coming out in fall. We'll be hosting 4 group interview sessions, 1 at each high school. We're hoping to have this accomplished November, maybe creeping into December if we have to. Overall, we'll have it open house style, open to all employee groups. We're not limiting it by strand. We just want to make sure that we have opportunities all across the district, opportunity and access for all. We will then be providing an email survey to a target group that are going to be principal or supervisor identified influencers in their building or department. We understand the value of face-to-face communication, but also are realistic in what we can accomplish in this short amount of time as we go into fall. Our second phase will be spring, and we'll be rolling out individual in-person interviews at each building location on top of hopefully getting out to transportation and our nutrition services areas that aren't necessarily at building sites. Voluntary sign-up options, aiming for a 2-hour window at each school, seeing as many people as we can reach.
Sure. So she talked a little bit about the how. Stay up here, Bree. You're getting away. So we want to make sure that as we, whether it's an HR person or whether it's a school leader or whether it's a labor partner that's helping us do this work, whoever is doing it, we want to make sure first they're trained in these sessions, because we want to focus on 4 questions. It's really important that we all stay with these 4 questions and we don't veer off to other things. Number 1, why do you stay with KSD? We had an opportunity where many people could have left. And so we're going to be asking that question. When is the last time you thought about leaving KSD and what prompted it? What's really important, and I want to share here, and we didn't get a chance to share that, in between phase 1 and phase 2, we will be publishing our results. Anonymously, of course. But we want people to see this is what our workforce is saying. This is why they're saying they're staying. This is why, when they thought about leaving, this is what prompted that. How can KSD improve your work experience? What can we do? We want to know what we can do to make it better. And then number 4, very important, and it really loops into the Gallup research, and that is, who are you connected to in your building and department, and what is your work support system? We know that when employees are connected and they have a support system, they stay. And you saw in the exit interviews how important that was to them. They were satisfied and very satisfied with their work teams. So how can we strengthen our teams? And Gallup words it this way in their survey: do you have a best friend at work? Which is an interesting one, because I always wonder if I really do have a best friend at work. But the point being, do you have those connections? Do you have someone that you can go in, close the door, and say, this is what I'm dealing with right now? And so we want to make sure that we know what our current status is with our workforce in the connections with one another. So the next steps, we're going to be coordinating with the community of organizational effectiveness regarding the staff climate survey, distribution and results. We're going to continue the exit survey interview process, continuing to improve those questions and think about other ways that we can follow up when we don't receive responses. Implement stay survey interview plan that Bree just outlined for you in phase 1 and 2. And we are sharing this publicly because we want to make sure that everyone tunes back in with us in the spring. We want to present the 2018-2019 Workforce Retention Report in late spring 2019. That will include information about the climate survey. It will include where we are with the exit surveys up until that point. And then, very importantly, what we've learned through the stay interviews. We want to identify action steps to increase workforce retention, but we don't want to do that until we've done the survey and we've heard from our workforce first. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to start from the end.
Okay. I guess just a comment on the question that was the focus and the goals. Just clarifying, I guess, more specifically what that question means to the people who are taking the survey, just so that they understand, are we talking about strategic goals? What are we
Exactly.
talking about? That way we get, I think, better data.
I think so too. I think any time that the question is open-ended or subject to interpretation, the data that you receive from that is not as reliable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Hardy.
Yeah, so you're looking at the stay interview questions, and I think we're saying this is the first time we're kind of doing it in this format. And the next steps plan looks good, but what do you hope to get out of this? Meaning, what could you learn from this that if you known it a year ago, you would have done something differently? And kind of taking that going forward. What do you want to know to help change how you're approaching whatever that is?
I think there's several things that we can gain from this. Certainly the other part of my mind that's thinking is recruitment. Obviously, I want to continue to think about how do we share, as all of us are recruiters, why KSD is a wonderful place to work. And it is a wonderful place to work. And we want to hear from our staff why they believe it's a wonderful place to work, so much so that they decided to stay here. And we think we know it from the exit survey, but we don't truly know until we've had those conversations. We know that work team is important, relationships with their supervisors is important. But I'd hazard to guess, I'm sure there are other aspects that maybe we didn't think about. It could be resources, time, materials, all types of things. That information will be helpful for us as we think about leveraging resources through allocations of either FTE and or budget.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So mine was on the community part where you're saying that you're going to do the group interview type things. How is that? Can you just give me a little bit more about how that's going to work on that open house style?
Sure. Go ahead.
So very much so when Dr. Watts had done his meetings out at the buildings and kind of had small group structured discussions, I believe that's kind of our hope is how it will be, is we'll have leaders at multiple tables able to kind of structure that conversation. And as it will be open house, people can kind of join in. None of the questions build off each other, so it's kind of nice. We believe people could probably walk in, join at any point, and then take a step back when they're done.
It's also really important for us that everyone knew what the questions were ahead of time. When you go to that open house, you know these are going to be the 4 questions, and those are not going to change. And they're not leading questions. They're very open-ended. Why did you stay? When did you think about leaving? What prompted it? It's not like, don't you think it's the best place in the world to work? It's not like that at all. It's open where people can really share their concerns, but do it in a smaller group setting. We know that if we were to bring everyone in a large room and everybody just shout things out, we're not going to hear from everyone, and equity is very important to us, and that means opportunity and access. So does everyone have the opportunity to have their voice heard?
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, so I wanted to check on some of the lower responses. I'm interested in hearing more about that, particularly like internal advancement and professional development. So how do we expect to capture that in the stay interview? If there are multiple answers, will we be gathering all of the answers, or how are they required to only respond to one or give one response to a question?
They can give as many responses as they'd like.
So how do you quantify that? Because right now you are checking off boxes. So that's leading to my next question, which is there a way that you can allow a board member, say, get a box where you can check off where we can get more details about what is being said without violating any privacy issues?
Absolutely. So two venues for doing this. We are going to have the survey. That's to the individuals that our supervisors have said these are influences in our building. But the majority of what we're doing with the stay interview process is just that. It's an interview. We're actually sitting down face to face with them, asking them these questions and recording their responses anonymously. And so we're going to be having a, very much like happened with Dr. Watt's meeting, where we asked those questions and we just wrote the responses. From there, we'll be able to look at patterns and trends, but it will be unfiltered. It will be exactly written as people are sharing it with us. We're happy to make those available as needed. So you would see their responses to those 4 questions. And to come back to your earlier question, Maya, at the beginning, when you said, how will that be captured? I believe you talked about internal.
Professional development, work environment. I mean, the ones that had the lower responses.
Absolutely.
Internal advancement.
So let's take an internal advancement. If someone did not feel like they had the opportunity to advance within the organization, I could very much see in that question, when's the last time you thought about leaving KSD and what prompted it? I could see that could possibly be a reason that they share. Any of those areas, it could be salary, it could be professional development. We're certainly going to look at how often something is mentioned across all of the interviews to see, does this look like a one-off, or is this really, no, this was a major pattern and theme that we heard many, many times over.
Yeah, I think my question is also, was it helpful to have a list of things to see, because will they always remember why, I would leave? What are all the reasons?
I certainly can see the interest in providing, here are all the things you could choose. I'm also very cautious about leading employees.
Sure.
And so I would like to keep that conversation open because they may go beyond even some of the things that we list. And I feel like if we gave them a menu of things, they may feel like they could only select from those.
Yeah, no, I think I just want to make sure that we're going to be consistent across in how we capture that data so that we are not dropping, pertinent information because
Absolutely.
it was stated differently. So there's room for that because
Yes.
it's so random. So
I think you make an excellent point, and I think that absolutely needs to be part of our training as we train our facilitators and going out and recording that information.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Brianna. All right, we are up to our next presentation, which is our strategic plan Goal 1 student achievement. And I'd like to call Dr. Harmon, Chief Accountability Officer, to present and answer questions.
Good evening, President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. I am clearly not Talisa Reed. Our Director of Assessment had a family emergency and couldn't be here this evening, so I am stepping in. I want to start this before we even move forward with talking about this, to talk about Goal 3. So the strategic plan work lives in Goal 3 at organizational effectiveness. And so just a reminder of that. And then what you see in the corner, in the bottom corner there is the reference to DARTS. That is how the organizational effectiveness team defines themselves within the community. And that just is defined by data assessment, research, technology, and strategy. Those are the 5 subcomponents of the organizational effectiveness groups. So that's what that means. And a reminder of how assessment defined themselves as a team. So this is their words of their work. Design, develop, deliver, maintain tools that evaluate and measure how students are doing so that we as adults can support and ensure that we are successfully preparing all students for their futures. That's their words of what assessment work is. So while we're here this evening is Goal 1. And although this is mostly about SBA performance, and some might question why we would consider this a strategic plan update. Given all of our work this summer, this is not heavily focused on some of those priority initiatives, although some of them live here, and I'll point those out in a few minutes. Part of the agreement with that team was also that the initial documents and some of the initial data that needed to be covered would not be lost in this. So in the strategic plan under Goal 1, the large portion of those metrics are about student achievement and student performance on SBA. So that's why this is also considered an update. And just a reminder of what Goal 1 is. So related to that, I also wanted to give a reminder of ESSA, so the Every Student Succeeds Act. And just to emphasize the importance of proficiency and what that plays a role in the weighting of the scores and determinations for schools. And that proficiency is based on SBA summative performance. Reminder of the schools that we have here. For a large district of our size, we're doing well. There's always room for improvement, but to only have 2 schools in comprehensive it's not a bad thing. But there's work to do and improvement opportunities across our district, not just for those 2 schools. And so here I want to talk about the data theory of action, and this is from OSPI. And it's a reminder that we all have a place in this work. So as we think about using data and the purpose of data to move a district forward and to focus on student results, tonight we're living here with data-driven actions and how the information that you all hear and that's shared with the board drive policy, drive program support, drive resources. And so just a reminder that we're living in kind of step 2 of that by providing this update this evening. And so now comes the fun part. So as it's becoming, hopefully, the norm as we move through the district of getting data in the hands of our stakeholders, users. You have on your machines a device where it's been uploaded, the same dashboard that I'll be working through over the next few minutes, where you will be given the opportunity to explore, play with the data, and follow along, as well as afterwards continue with that work. So we're going to start with a traditional kind of overview of just how we're doing in the district on SBA by grade level. Didn't really make it any bigger. So when we look at this, traditionally what we've done is compare ourselves to the state. And over time, what I'd say the story in Kent has been is that we're better than the state. We typically outperform the state. And if you look at our 2018 ELA results by grade level, what you see is that with the exception of 6th grade, the state is just ever so slightly besting Kent. So this is a shift in where we've been historically. If I click the drop down and look at math, the story ever so slightly still remains the same. I want to give one disclaimer about 10th grade. So our high school data is always mixed just because the state in recent years has shifted what grade levels are taking the test. So just not that this is not an accurate reflection of 10th graders. It doesn't reflect all of the students who've passed the assessment or took the assessment for the year. So I just want to put that out there. So don't take that and read that into high school proficiency. So when we go up into the second tab here, we start to get to some of the things that you're more interested in talking about and the questions that you ask us typically. So we think about student group by subject and by grade, but we also like to think about things like student group in terms of ethnicity. So what you have here are all of our student groups, and you see the historical performance data. If you hover over, you'll see the student count. That's important to consider when you think about some of our smaller student groups in that representation, because sometimes small numbers will wildly skew the performance. So depending on how those students are doing, you'll see different results from year to year. But when you look at our larger populated student groups, you can make a more stable comparison and more consistent assumptions about how performance is happening. In the tool that you actually have loaded to your desktop, you can actually look at and see student group performance by ethnicity and grade level. So you have the ability to cross that? No, you don't.
No, it asks for username and password.
I apologize because I thought we tested that and it opened up maybe for everybody, but you did. I'm sorry. We tested it during the break. Okay. During the break and work session, I will make sure that you get your access so that you were able to see that. I thought we tested each machine before. So that you're able to see those kind of cross intersections. And this is not a surprise. The district always has lower proficiency rates in math. It is an ongoing struggle for the district. It is definitely somewhere where we should consider what our resources look like and what our plan is as that moves forward. You have the ability to look by school. I'm not going to go through that this evening because that's not really, it would be a much more longer and detailed process. But you also have the ability in this, which is very nice. So as board directors, you can speak to performance in every district, across the district as a whole by student group, but you also have the ability to do this by the areas that you support. So you could speak to particular constituents in your director areas about performance in those buildings by student group and have conversations that way as well. One of the things that I want to point out specifically, that really is one of the priority initiative areas that the Strategic Plan Steering Committee pointed out was reading proficiency by third grade. That was one that, interestingly, slightly flew in the face of what we agreed, meaning that reports on SBA, general reports on SBA proficiency and things that were required by the state wouldn't be included as a priority initiative. But this one rose to the level a priority initiative for the group because reading on grade level by the end of third grade is actually a metric that city development areas use and county government areas use to predict the size of the prison population moving forward. And so it is a key school to prison pipeline metric. It doesn't mean that it's a direct one-to-one correlation, but it is a data point that's used. And so I want to highlight our third grade reading performance just for all students, to keep it in mind and kind of bring attention to that, because that is an area of focus. So I'd say that statistically, we're not losing ground, but we are holding steady with slightly more than 50% of our students in third grade being proficient in ELA as they move forward. So rather than go back to the screen and say, I'll take questions from here and we can go through the data. If there are other things you have questions about, we can work that way. So I will yield the floor to questions.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to dive down deeper into the information and to be able to look at it. So are we doing any comparisons outside of, I know we're doing our district to the state, but are we looking at like districts that have similar size and demographics at this time?
So we are a bit of an interesting unicorn in that, depending on how you define like district. So there are like districts that are more demographically similar to Kent, but they are not size-wise similar. So I think about Tukwila is a wonderful partner in terms of diversity similarity. They are not when it comes to size. Lake Washington is a great size-wise partner or peer district, but not so much when it comes to ethnicity demographics. And so as we move forward, we can do that, but we're trying to build a data culture where people understand then what those comparisons mean and how to pick pieces of nuggets of that away, because there is a story and there's a lesson to learn, possibly from Tukwila and from Lake Washington as well, even though they are not exactly like Kent. But we haven't gotten there yet. But that is what's next on the agenda. We are going to start doing that, and hopefully at some point we'll push just a little bit further. One of the gifts of using Smarter Balanced Assessment is that it is a national standardized assessment, so we don't have to live within the boundaries of Washington State. We could actually identify peer school districts that are administering SBA outside of the state of Washington.
Thank you.
This would be more of how do you, because we're looking at this, we're looking at 17, 18. So between now and when we get this, we've got to do something with it. So to talk about that, either feedback loop or how you either get this back to the schools or connect with different programs to say, okay, we saw growth, which is great. Let's say I'm looking at what you're looking at now. We saw growth and it's good. But if you look at, actually I'm looking at mine by ethnicity, some of those student groups aren't where we want them to be, and they haven't been for a while. So how are we turning that around and figuring either, you can go backwards into the data, do a deep dive, try to get some details, but then how do we take it forward and say, what do we want to do differently to affect this? So
as we move forward with building our data culture and kind of moving into this using data to drive decision-making and support with programs, every stakeholder group will have a slightly different sandbox of information, if that makes sense. So for example, the principals didn't exactly get this, but they started to get some initial data that would allow them to work on their school improvement plans. And as we continue to develop with them, they will be able to have deeper dives of that give student level information. And their sandbox area around some of these results would look different, slightly different, but lead to similar conversations with teaching and learning. So that every group is starting to get those data points to be able to drill down deep so that they can have those collaborative conversations around, okay, what do programs, resources, and supports look like? But also have conversations, especially at central admin, of, is this a specific school issue? Or is this a more universal district issue? And being able to pull that out and see that in the data. So you can see that kind of at a 50-foot level. So it's easy for me to stand here and say that math, something we should focus on. But then you start to unpack what that means and what those supports could look like, and that's where we get deeper into that. So like they wouldn't have, by director district, that's not, I mean, it's nice to know, but that's not necessarily helpful when they're thinking about programmatic support and resources. So every stakeholder group will be slightly different, but providing similar drill down so that they can actually have conversations about the work. So that's where we're going, and they've started to get a little taste of that. So.
Thank you.
I'm sort of going similar to what Ross said. I know I've mentioned this before, math, we watch the math growth go down from K 1, 2, 3, and then in other grades too. But have we asked teachers what they need? And have we asked students what they need to help succeed, for them to succeed? You know, if they're not succeeding, what is it that they're missing? And I'd like that by student group, because I think that's where we might see more, might get more information that helps us.
So I can say that I do not believe that I've seen anything that says that we've asked students about, or staff, about specific academic struggle, especially around math or particular content area. But I did kind of make a mental note, and I'm saying it out loud just so when Pam takes the notes, she'll write this down, that we could possibly add additional information about domain and about the specifics of not just math, but what specific areas in math by grade level are we seeing struggle. That's not the same as asking students and staff, and I'm not saying we don't do that, but at least we can provide a more nuanced level even in just this data. So.
And also in ELA, because we bought new resources several years ago, elementary school, and if we're not seeing growth, why not? So just that.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yes, I just want to make sure that if we are looking at supports, that when the results do come out, we're capturing what supports we did provide, so that the analysis, post-analysis, looks at those supports. So I don't know if we're able to capture that in this system.
So I'm not saying that that's impossible, but what I can say is that in a recent executive cabinet meeting, colleagues shared a spreadsheet that they're building that talks about some of the school-based programs and supports, like intervention supports. There. And so if we can't capture it in this tool to have it highlight, it could be a companion tool that would at least speak to that could be provided. We can work to that.
That would be helpful the next time around to see what supports were available when we're looking at the numbers and the changes. So.
And that it would not be included here so much, because here, if it were included at the district level, you just see a long list. It would be more meaningful at the school level, because some of those intervention supports are different by school. So that's where that would show.
So it'll be the companion list, meaning it'll be a printout.
No, it may. If we can figure out how to include that in the tool, it's a possibility. I'm not saying that we can't. I just can't guarantee that we can do that.
Okay. That would be helpful.
But yes, it would definitely be by school, because they do differ by school.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Herman. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you.
And you can take the device with you and we can talk about how you could continue to use that.
All right, thank you. Will do. All right, before we go to our next presentation, Shannon Jeffson Hernandez wanted to speak to our employee retention study plan. Please.
Hi, Shannon Jepson Hernandez, Mill Creek Middle School. I had different things that I wanted to say today after I listened to this. But I've been sitting there and I'm thinking, what are we really doing? Like, I come to these meetings every week and it's just turning into this repeated process of groupthink where we watch fancy presentations. The information we're given is guided. I mean, I want to see the real stuff. I want to be asking the real questions. I'm just kind of sick of the warm fuzzies because I look at things like the 2017 King County Firearm Violence Report that just came out, where it identifies that 49% of the victims are under the age of 25. That's our students. That's my students that have recently graduated. Or the fact that 83% of those are male. And of that, 55% of those are African American, 17% of them are Latino. And back in the spring, we had a report on graduation rates, retention rates, behavior, discipline happening in schools. I know Mill Creek was targeted as one of the focus areas. I know KM was identified too, maybe not by name, but we could see it in the report exactly where that was. And I stood up here repeatedly then and now asking, why are we losing programs like LEAP, specifically that address our boys of color? You know, you can celebrate your fraction of percent of graduation rates that have increased over the last few years. I'm talking a fraction of a percent, but yet the graduation rates of those boys have gone down. So why should we be celebrating? I'm not celebrating. I go to bed every night praying to God that my kids stay alive, that my students stay alive. We currently have one student in jail for a horrible accident that happened this summer, and I want to know, where is our accountability? That boy deserved a lot more from us, and we just kept passing him forward. And I'm kind of just sick of it. And so when I sit there and think about our employee retention plan, and I hear comments like how people felt working at KSD, and I think about, well, what about those months of community comments and teacher comments, and why wasn't anybody listening then? Or employee engagement is about listening. Yeah, it is. But I've been up here like every single month talking, and nobody's listening, all right? Or we want to hear what our workforce has to say. Well, our workforce requested that 2 school board members step down and that our superintendent resign because we're watching our students drop out and we're watching our students die. 2017, we had quite a few students who got killed in gang violence and drive-bys, and why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we sitting here and comparing the data that our county and our government is pulling? Why do we care about math and reading when kids are dying? I care about math and reading too, but if we want to see that get better, let's act like we care about kids and what they need. As far as this exit survey goes, I can tell you as a teacher, half of us think this is a joke. Give us an outside auditing company that will come in and actually give you our information, and we'll tell you the truth of how we feel. And if you really want to know about employee engagement and care why we stay for these kids, we stay for the people we work with, but we don't stay to get ignored.
All right, 3.03, capital project status update, please. I'm calling Mr. Dave Buzzard, Director of Capital Projects, to present and answer questions.
There it goes. Great. Awesome. Good evening, President Van Nicholson, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Halley, community, staff, and of course, good old Dave Buzzard. I want to direct you to 3 words on my opening slide. It's 3 things that I'm kind of passionate about. I've been here at the district for about 2 years. I come from a wide diversity of projects, jobs, and it is challenges, solutions, results. Tonight I'm going to give you an overview project update of our 2016 and our 2006 bond projects that are actually still around. So let's dive right into it. The first overview I'm going to give you is the 2006 remaining bond projects. We have about 8 projects still on the books from the 2006 bond. And those have run their course. They just have not been finished yet. They were at the end of the bond when projects were coming down to a minimum for funding. So we've left those on the books, but we are finishing those. The 2016 bond issue and breakdown. I'll also get into some project scheduling, which is a draft of what we've done thus far. And then we're going to look at some completed projects to date, and we'll take some questions. So the 2006 remaining bond projects, one of the largest ones that was on that bond that we've had here is the intruder lock project. I'll speak to the last comment there. We've done a lot in our schools. We've created an entire intrusion system inside with locks where teachers don't have to open up their doors and lock it from the outside. They can lock them from the inside. So this project, I'm proud to say that we have completed all but the initial phase of going back through and making sure that any door that wasn't on the original schedule is being addressed now. The other items on here, admin center, fence and gates. It's another little security project that we've had. We'll be looking into design of that one. Fairwood Elementary North Parking Lot. That actually is going to be run into the Fairwood multi-purpose room. And I'm going to go ahead and combine that project, multi-purpose room and the parking lot project, so we can gain some funds from the 2006 bond. Horizon Elementary driveway improvements. We actually have a driveway improvement on the 2016 bond for an additional parking space other than the one that was on the 2006 bond. So again, we're going to have some funds to be able to do that as well. Neely O'Brien Elementary driveway renovation. That was one that was kind of caught at the end of the bond issue in 2006. The original budget that came through as cost escalations have risen across through the 2006 bond and now into the 2016, we find that that project will need some help with either some state match or some other bond derivatives to finish that project, but we are going to finish that project. Security cameras. This is a fantastic one. Actually, this is the first job that Fred Long actually gave me when I started here. And he was like, Dave, we're going to put cameras everywhere in the elementary schools. I'm like, okay, that's an easy job. Well, it's not so easy. So working with security safety services and Tim walking the buildings and getting all these security cameras up has been an amazing project. I'm glad to see that that's all the way through. Now we're going back into the phase 2, and what we're doing there is we're going into the middle school and the high schools to get into some of those challenged areas in the campuses where safety services wanted some extra eyes. And then the district-wide access control measure. This was one where access badge got us in. As you can see, we've added a few more around the campus here as well. We're on full lockdown, as well as some of the schools, one way in, one way out. Now we're going back through to see, okay, Panther Lake is a great one. It's behind a fence, but there's 11 portables in the back. How do they get back into the school? Well, they've been using a key. Now they can use an access. So a teacher gets an access badge, hangs it up. That's your bathroom pass. Take it out, hit the door, go inside. Easy peasy. So let's talk about the 2016 total bond project. This was something that started in 2012, didn't pass, went to 2015, and Fred Long, and along with the team in the capital projects planning area, went out and said, hey, look, you know, what can we do? What do we need to do a little differently to get this bond passed? So they went out to the community and they said, hey, we need some support. Let's do some due diligence. Here are about 120 individual projects that we want. We need about $252 million. It passed in 2016, and I was hired. Thank goodness. There are 3 all-project sites. So there's 3 projects in the capital planning where everything gets done. One of them is an asbestos removal of pipes, and please don't be alarmed. It's not like we have asbestos floating around everywhere. It's just in our old schools. Down in some of the mechanical areas, we still have some elbows and some pipe that have some asbestos on it. And Ross is shaking his head. I know exactly, he knows exactly what it is. We're also going to do metal ramps at the dumpsters. And what that is all the dumpsters in the district right now have no handrails. And they're wood, and they're heavy. So what we're going to do is we're going to help Sandy DeMar and the head custodians out at the 42 sites, and we're going to pull those old wooden ones out, put some new nice aluminum ones that can be moved easily and have handrails on them. And then our Promethean board. This project excites me very well. You know, it's an interactive whiteboard. There's about 1,500 that will be implemented over the next 3 years. It's a fantastic project, and you'll hear more about that later on. Some of the other major ones are one replacement of an elementary school, Covington. Full CO, by the way. How about that? Bam. Just got that one. And then we are in that building completely, and we have full use of it. Another elementary school that we're going to build is the New Valley Elementary School. It's going to be up at the KMVA site. And that design I'll be looking forward to presenting very soon. And then we're going to do a new academy site at the old Panther Lake site. So let's do some project breakdowns. So at the new Covington School, the New Valley School, 9 new multi-purpose rooms, and I believe Karen was very adamant about that. One of my first presentations I heard Karen, she was very happy to know that those were being pushed up to the front for priority. 10 middle and high school field renovations, which will be new sod, turf, drainage, and irrigation. Transportation parking lot upgrades, actually current going on right now. That's going to give Justin and his team of drivers down there about an extra, I think I'm going to get about 59 spaces. He's only parking about 30 buses down there. We'll get about 59 spaces out of it. So that's very nice. Along with that one, we've also put in the infrastructure, and we've designed it for a new refueling station that we're going to need here in the next few years. And the Promethean board with sound-assisted listening. So when it comes down to the maintenance and operation infrastructure, what they did is they have life safety items, which are the fire alarm and emergency lightings, 12 roof replacements that are way past their life expectancy at this point, 6 complete boiler replacements, and I believe Cedar Heights and Kent Lake were the first 2 projects, and they are completely done as of today. 5 complete door hardware replacements, and again, it goes back to that intruder. We're putting new door hardware on, and when we do redo the hardware at those schools where they've had hardware on for 30 plus years, we'll be installing the new intruder hardware there. 9 emergency management system alerts and conservation measures, and then 4 HVAC replacements with new heat pumps and AC. And what those are is at Sunrise and Neely O'Brien, Daniel, and Horizon, I believe, are the 4 schools. If you've been to our top building, the outreach building, that building was built with combined heat and AC units as a combined package that sits in the room. So we don't have to have boilers versus an air handling unit on the roof. What we do is we put those right inside the classrooms. They're very efficient and they work very well. During the 2016 bond project breakdown, also there were other school and district requested projects, such as Lake Young wanted a new health room, Carriage Crest, Pine Tree, Cedar Valley, Grass Lake Horizon also wanted parking lot revisions. Scenic Hill wants a new library multimedia center, which that'll be designed and built. Kent Ridge High School remodel of the Performing Arts Center, or the PAC. Maintenance, I'm proud to say that we finally got our permit for the new maintenance building, and we'll be putting a 10,000 square foot, basically a metal Morton building back here in the back on the campus, and that's for the additional maintenance storage. We're trying to save some products when we take them out of the schools so we can reuse them down the road. Sue's Creek Elementary will have a computer lab. Martin Sertoon, instructional and climate enhancements. And East Hill Elementary will get some kindergarten classroom dividers. Additional schools were submitted. These were things that actually came right out of the schools back in the 2015 they were asking for. Neely O'Brien, one heating system and floor covering. Kentwood High School, the PAC Center to be remodeled. Kent Meridian High School, replace windows in the main building. And Meridian Elementary, we're going to replace the heating system and boiler in the 1938 building, which Israel Vela knows all about. Cedar Heights, a middle school conversion of classrooms to science rooms, locate one classroom, and then Meadow Ridge Elementary, we're going to replace the carpet and vinyl flooring. So how did we get the community involved? So when Fred Long put the bond issue together, they went out with the community and they said, okay, here's some projects that we want to do. What do you think? And they said, great. What's the priority you think that you want to do it? So when we talk about community, we talk about equity, we talk about partnering with our community, these are the things. So this was a strategic project draft plan that was put together from the list of the 2015 community members that were part of the project committee. So what this shows, it's like I said, it's a draft schedule. If you look at some of the major projects on the left, everything from Covington all the way down to school projects, you may see them in green being opened or in design, construction. You have to remember, construction is a living, breathing organism. It goes left and right and up and down. So just use this as a guide. This will move to the right or to the left as needed. All right, so what have we done? What have we completed to date? Well, I'm happy again to say that New Covington Elementary School opened on time, and we do now have a full building. Robert Myers, I'm going to do a shout out to him, who's our chief building official at Covington. He's a fantastic guy, and I can't say enough about him. Grass Lake and Park Orchard multi-purpose rooms are both open and ready for business. Neely O'Brien, metal ramps at the portables was done earlier this year. Jenkins Creek fire alarm replacement was done over the summer, and it is finished now. And then Kent Ridge High School tennis courts along with Kent Lake tennis courts were done as well. Just a nice aerial shot. If you take a look at that, that was our site on July 5th, 2017. As you can see, this over here on the right is 256. This is 156. We had a 12-acre site. This over here, if everybody remembers, maybe you don't. This is right here where we did our groundbreaking ceremony. From this point here, 18 feet down was pushed all the way to there and raised 18 feet. So basically we moved about 4 million bags of mulch, if you think about it. And in September, that's what it looked like. That was a couple of days after opening day. And we opened up on time. Very proud of that. Here's another shot in the back of school. This was opening day. Just a really cool thing. Sarita's like, I'm gonna bring 600 kids through the front door. She goes, no, we're gonna take them to the back. So here's the shot for that. Multi-purpose rooms. So at Grass Lake, if you remember, photograph on the left here, was 3 trees and pine needles. Now you have a 5,000 square foot flexible space for afternoon events, lunch program, performing arts, whatever it is that you'd like to do. Multi-purpose room at Park Orchard. If anybody's been in that back area, that was just an asphalt parking lot. Kids used to come out those back doors, and although we took up a couple of 4 squares, the place on the right there is another adaptable and accessible space for our students, and it is wonderful. Tennis courts, Kent Ridge. This was a challenge. The entire lower court of the Kent Ridge tennis courts 5 and 6 had to be completely excavated out. The asphalt underneath there was failed so bad. I'm glad that we took it to the next step. So there's a before and after shot. Questions?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Buzzard.
I just have, on the Covington Elementary, obviously 156th has changed significantly. What did that all involve? It looks like we've got, it was a 2-lane road before. Now it looks like it's got 3 lanes. It's turning lane in the middle. Was that county? Is that county out there? That's not city anymore. So
It is the city of Covington, and yes, that was some major changes. We actually had to redo the entire intersection at 156 and 256 to include a new light. We had to redo 3 of the ADA ramps. We had to raise the road 27 feet south of the center line down by 3 feet. We had to dig up the entire road because when we started to chip up the old asphalt that was on 156, they found a 2-inch asphalt patch that was underneath of it that was loose. So yes, there were quite a bit of road work out there. That's why the contractor wanted to wait till the very end, wanted to close that road off for, I think if everybody remembers, it was about 4 or 5 days closed down. Lots and lots of civil work. But we do have a center lane. We do have a turn-in lane. We have a separated bus loop. We have a drop-off area. And we actually, I don't think Justin is here, but Justin and I and Safety Services, along with Israel, got together and we worked it out with Covington and King County, and they actually dropped in those school flashing lights for us quite quickly.
Wow. Impressive.
Can't wait to tour you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Very welcome.
So we've seen over the past some of these projects that are still ongoing, not done yet, coming back to us with additional change orders or using capacity, and there's some additional schools submitted. I know we might have approved recently some extra projects. How are we, in terms of the plan we have going forward, how much do we have left in the bond to cover overruns, various things that happen over time, or more really I'm getting at is how comfortable are you that all the projects we have and the timeline that was laid out there are going to be completed within a reasonable budget using the 2016 bond money?
That's a great question, Ross, and I'm glad you, Director Hart, I'm glad you asked me that. So what we've done is I have done a very extensive dig dive down into each remaining bond project for the 2016 bond. Yes, escalation costs are high. Yes, you have seen change orders, and I'm here to tell you you're going to continue to see change orders. What we've done is we've built contingency within each project. We have an overall contingency for the entire bond of about $10 million. With that, we also have found some savings. Park Orchard, for number one, about $795,000 in the positive, but that was our first one. So in what that was is we didn't have any civil issues. We didn't have to put a fire loop around the entire building like we did at Park Orchard for $273,000. What we are trying to do, and where I am being as proactive as I can, is really going into pre-application status. And with pre-application status, this is where we take our plans and we go down to Kent, City of Kent, we go into City of Covington, we go to King County, and we sit down and we talk with them strategically about, okay, here's my plan, this is what we'd like to do. What's happening across more than one district, and it's happening to us, it's happening to every district in the state. The organizations at the city, the county, at the state level will say, well, if you want to build that, that's great, but you're going to have to improve the road in front of it. I'm seeing somewhere between 20 and 40% of additional cost to do that. So now I've become a negotiator, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, because that's how I feel that we will get through that. We are going to have to be strategic about what we build. We need to make sure that it's equitable. We need to make sure that it's for everyone, that it's useful. But I really think going forward, it's having those relationships with the city, the county. I think that's where we're going to make our bond projects come in on time and under budget. You're welcome.
So I appreciate the presentation, and congratulations on Covington. That is, I know we were concerned about that, so thank you for making sure that happened. So as a community member, if I want to get an idea of what projects are and what status and when they're expected to start, is the website under projects the best place to be able to go and look at that? Or, so if I wanted to get more details on a project that you had up on this, I guess I'm saying, where would I go?
Yep, that's a great question. So on the website, we have promises made, promises kept. On that format, that platform, we put out there all the projects for the bond that are there. And then some of them do have TBDs because projects get moved up, some of them get pushed back. It all depends on priority. But that is a great resource to start. We're actually looking at our team site as well too, capital planning, and we're going to devise something working with Melissa in communications and public affairs, and get something out there as well too that we'd like for everybody to see.
I wanted to first say that I did appreciate the project area scheduling. I think it's great to follow that and to see where we're at, especially with the new elementary school. But I did have questions on the academy facility and didn't give a lot of updates on where we're at. So in terms of communication with our architect, you know, how is it going to look with the different academies in one campus? Is it going to be one big room? How are you discussing, or what are you discussing at this point?
Yes, so Israel and I have had lots of discussion with that, and Wade Behringer, who's the EdLey that oversees Stephanie Knipp and Mary Lee. Really what we've done at this point, we've sat down and we've done the ed specifications for the academies, both when KMV comes out and is housed in KPA. That will give us the plan to keep them together. As we design the next classroom space, I'm not too sure what that name is. But what I can tell you is that it will be a site that will be instructionally and community oriented. I think that's the best way to put that. No, it won't be a box. It will have its classrooms. It will have its designated areas. But I really feel strongly that as we go into this new realm of looking at how we can take an academy setting and put it into, it's not really a four-sided box. It's really community-oriented. There's so many programs out there. So that's where we're looking at that right now. Ed specifications are done. We haven't looked at the building size yet. We're still very much into the design phase of how the programming works.
Okay, so we're still on time with that particular
Yes,
project?
absolutely. So what happens is it takes about a year for design, takes about a year for a permit, takes about a year for build. That's your typical timeline for any school.
So when will that go up on the projects side? Is it it's not up yet, right? And that.
No, the academy site will run concurrently with the New Valley School.
No, I meant the process, the project area scheduling. Will it get on there? Or?
Yes.
Data commission? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. And then finally, I just wanted to ask about the cafeteria for Pine Tree Elementary. Where in the phase is that? Got some questions on that while I was touring.
That was a tough one. We had an architect, a couple of community members who actually popped by when we were out there one day. And where we have decided to put it is just on the northeast side of the gym. So right where the parking lot comes around, the circle, it will be in between the circle and the gym wall. And one of the reasons why we decided to put it there is because most of these multipurpose rooms, although used during the day for lunch exercise, programs, classroom. The community loves to use these spaces, and that's why we build them. We build them for community use as well, too.
Like, when will we have a cafeteria for Pine Tree?
Oh, so sorry about that. The design is it is in design. It is not in permit yet. We are in the pre-application state. So that application would go in. I would think we're probably looking at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that's it. That's all I had. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, we are going to 4.0, our second reading of policies and discussion, and Dr. Harmon has left on a trip. And so Mr. Vela is stepping in to answer any questions from the board. We'll start with 4.01, our second reading. We had our first reading on the work session. This is our second reading for Policy 6210, Purchasing and Contracting, Authorization and Control. Start with Debbie first. Director Strauss.
Thank you. So I know that I appreciate the fact that we added additional information as far as what we mean as far as capital outlay expenditures. I didn't know if we were going to have, we'd believe ask whether the $5,000 that was in there would be a hardship to the district if everything above 5,000 had to come, and we had talked about possibly changing that amount. And I don't know if do you have any information about what all, is that what?
Yeah, the changes, okay. If you look in the track changes, the $5,000 is in there. However, in your discussion, if that is a discussion or you want us to go back and relook at that, we certainly can.
So these are the only ones that were in that area?
The question isn't on what we were just handed out, because I think we asked for what we're, I don't know what we're at before, say 50,000, 75,000, what we're at now. What is the difference between 5,000 and 75,000? How many more transactions are we looking at?
Apologize, can I make sure, I want to make sure we don't, we allow everybody to speak and take turns. So are you done, Debbie?
Yeah, his was right along with what I was asking,
okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what the key thing that I wanted to make sure that I conveyed on behalf of Dr. Harmon is the things we heard at the work session were definitions that you asked for capital outlay. So that could mean a number of things. So the list you see are a number of, as an example of 1718. What we spent upwards of about $70,000 in 1718. And the other piece that you asked during the work session was related to the question I just had is, and I remember discussion was actually $5,000 is what's in our track changes. And I recall that the conversation was about, now if you take the number of the different requests, they could equal far more than $50,000. And so that's where we are. And I think your question is, so what does that, how many of these will we see coming to us? And if it's at 5,000, we'll see quite a few coming to us at that level.
And to that point, I think at 5,000, I would say we'll see virtually all capital outlay requests come before the board, unless we have something that doesn't meet it. It's basically an exception more than that we wouldn't see something. And I think to your point, Director Strauss, is how much of a burden is that on the extra resource allocation rather than burden, let's say, on providing that information? Meaning, the real thing that I want to know is it going to hold up start of projects because we can't get everything approved in time? Yeah,
and I without having the crystal ball, I can tell you that depending on when those are entered, they could overlap. So yes, you could have some coming to the board before others, and so we'll have to be strategic on making sure we get these in so we're not delayed. So to answer your question, yes, it'll have an impact. To what extent, we won't know until we start seeing them come in, but they will be quite frequent at $5,000. I also recall the conversation that we had was, is there another number? I believe, I think it was you, Director Hardy, that mentioned 25,000 or President Bangadossalam. And so that's what this time is for your discussion on what that number might be. And again, this is our second reading.
I want to make sure everybody has a turn to speak, and then we can have a discussion if we wish. So, yeah, we're finished.
Oh, yes, please.
And I'm looking at that too, and thinking 5,000 is a really low number, and that we're going to have a ton of stuff coming through the board. And it's not that it's going to be a bother to us, but it's going to slow things down and cause some problems for the district. So I'd like to see that the amount raised.
All right. Yes, I had done some inquiries before, and it looked like 25,000 was a good number to use. But I think one of the considerations we talked about was also the contract amount versus expenditures. So we're looking at the contract in its entirety and not looking at what we're spending year to year. So if we spend the first installment $15,000, but the entire contract is $100,000 or $25,000, it needs to come to the board. And so that practice hasn't been very clear. So I want to make sure we're making that distinction. And also, the definition of capital outlay, I don't think is all-encompassing. If we look at the federal regulation code that's up on top that we added to the CFR that we added, it includes a lot more items. So I want to make sure we're capturing, for example, our software licenses in the right category, so that it is capturing all of our purchases and referencing, and so we don't follow some other policy for things that are outside these what we define as equipment, which also includes IT licenses and so forth. So that's one.
And I made a note of that to make sure that we include that in the third reading.
Yes, thank you. And the other issue, I think there was a question that we've gone back and forth on, the verbiage renewal, what that means. So I think we need a definition on that. And I guess all of this to say that we are going into a third reading, it looks like.
Well, the definition as capital outlay, as read, does not specifically include software. It talks about equipment, improvements to something, or something that is a tangible item. And so I think we want it to be inclusive of anything that plus anything that we could buy with a capital bond or software, things intangible that have a useful life of more than a year.
Yeah, and the federal definition does include that. Yeah. So if we're referencing that federal regulation, then we should be using their definition, I guess is my point. So anyway, there's more discussions on that.
Do we want to change the amount from 5,000 to 25,000 with your wording in there about the contracts being in full, not just?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Valley, you're taking notes,
yes,
and so it'll come back to the third reading for us to review.
Yeah, so I've captured the notes. We're also, now that we have the full streaming of the video, Pam Holly will also be re-listening to it, looking at to make sure we capture all of your discussion and your recommendations.
And Maya, just kind of, I think this is what you said, but if we've got like a license that we're using, if we're going to repeat it the next year, that needs to come back to the board, I think. I mean, if it's something like a renewal with return on investment.
Yeah.
you know, what are we getting from this?
Yeah.
How valuable is it before we approve it again instead of just letting it run?
Yes.
So,
Anything over that threshold
yeah.
that we're capitalizing should come to the board. So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you very much. Oh, we have more. Second reading of Policy 6220, Purchasing and Contracting, Bids versus Contracts. Would anyone like to go first?
I don't necessarily have a question. I guess I'll reiterate my question from the past work session. We're looking at bids and contracts. We're looking at exemptions. We note the 3 levels for what requires different bidding. Anything over, as I check now, 75,000 requires the competitive bidding process, multiple bidders, things like that. As I read it, therefore the exemptions, it's only the board, and I'm assuming it's some kind of resolution, and we can clarify that, that can waive any requirements for a competitive bid. And just to clarify, and I think we talked about that before, but that we didn't necessarily define what that is in terms of a resolution, or you come back to us. Like in most cases, I know that we've had issues where you just don't get enough people responding bids, and you maybe have one, but you have to go forward with it. Probably the most likely, but what is that mechanism for making sure that we provide that waiver? Probably not in policy, but as we go in and we look at updating procedure as well.
Right. Yeah, after this discussion, once the policies are agreed upon, then we follow up with the aligned procedure. The other piece, just as a reminder that based on our work session and your discussion, Dr. Harmon brought up the idea, at least we captured from the spirit of your conversation, was around interpreting the policy so it included all district purchases, recall that? And that currently what we see in our policy termed bids and contracts. And so I believe she brought up the idea of changing that potentially. You having a discussion on changing that to procurement, rather than bids and contracts. And then from there, we also talked about looking at other districts to see what they do. We did look at Seattle and I believe Tacoma. They do exactly what Dr. Harmon captured from your conversation. So something else for you to consider.
Okay. That was mine, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Nothing? Okay. Deborah, anything? If not, I'll go. So we did talk about procedures, accompanying procedures to this, which are not on the board docs.
Yes, we won't have those until we get to the third reading of the policy, and then we would align them with the final.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're following WASDA policy and procedure to them. Okay. So anything else under 6220?
Just from policy, now that this is no changes, we would then have this ready for approval at a future board meeting without a third reading.
Correct.
That was it.
Okay. All right. And going on to 6230, purchasing, contracting, relations with vendors. Anyone like to start?
I will. I appreciate the definition of a gift. I think it makes that very clear in there. So I appreciate that being added in there. I think that was one of the main things that we had asked for to be added into that one. So thank you.
I would say we talk about exceptions to the gift rule. What is the value? We have 50 in there, but I want to make sure that we're referencing or we're aligned with whoever. If there's a state rule, if there's a federal rule, if that is aligned with it, I don't know. But if $50 is appropriate, or is it 25, or I don't know what that number is, but that we're aligned and we're not just making up our own number.
Good. I made a note of that. Absolutely. If I might remind you also, a conversation about conflict of interest that you had, and right now we currently don't have a policy. I believe Dr. Harmon shared, and that a recommendation is that we create 16, I believe it's 1610 in WASDA, and that more clearly explains conflict of interest, which we don't currently have. So that was a recommendation. So that, if the board just recalls that conversation, certainly we'll include that for your consideration. Okay.
Director DeBruler, any other questions? No? Okay. All right. I'm good with this one as well. Thank you, Mr. Belley.
You're welcome.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Before we move forward, I just wanted to check to see if there was any way that we could have some of the students talk, just because we have to leave at a reasonable time so they can go to school and work the next day. Yeah. Some of them have to take the bus, so I'd rather them get safe, home safely. So if there was any way that could happen, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. I want to make sure we have 2 student cards, Mark Castillo and Megan White. Are there any other students?
Yes. Yes, there's
Speaking.
one student who's accompanied by a family member.
Do we have a card?
Yes, but it's under Blanca.
All right. If everybody's okay with that, then
Thank you very much.
sure. You're welcome. Student first, Mark Castillo.
Can I start talking now? Okay, so I'm Mark Castillo, and I'm an iGrad student. I've been there for almost 3 years now, and I've brought some concerns because a lot of students don't have the necessary resources to complete their education. A lot of people don't really have access to our laptops, or there isn't enough hours in iGrad that people can actually change their schedules to so they can attend the school. A lot of people have been telling the principal that they can't have their boss change the hours for this. And I'm not just speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for the entire school. And I want all these students to actually graduate and such. And we were supposed to get our one-on-one laptops. And as the tech levy said, that all the KSD students would get their one-on-one laptops. We have our banner up here, and we're supposed to be treated like any other Kent School District Academy. If they're supposed to have it up here, then they should be showing us that they actually treat us like Kent School District students, because we are actually getting really tired of all these changes that we have to suffer through. And another thing is, we just want our vice principal back, because with the shortened hours, we really just can't do much if we can't change our schedules. Not everybody's able to afford to come earlier in the morning. This is basically our last resort to actually graduate on time. After iGrad, we don't really have anything. So it's a lot of concerning things for not just adults, but the future of all these students too. Maybe not all the kids can actually graduate on time. If, say, some future students end up going there and they say, all right, we got to shut down iGrad. Do you really think that it's fun messing around with people's educations? If there's nothing left after iGrad, then there's just a lot of people that don't actually graduate. And I'm actually really concerned that maybe after this, nobody's going to have a way to actually graduate. I'm just really concerned, not just for mine, but for ours right now and our future generations. That's all I have to say.
Megan White.
Hi, you guys. My name is Megan White. I'm a current student at iGrad. I recently joined about 4 to 5 weeks ago as a previous Kentridge student, and I had no idea this resource was available when I first started. I had recently dropped out because of mental health issues that kept me from getting what I want, my degree. And I was really working towards it, and then I figured out iGrad was there for me. And that helped me out so much. It's been 4 or 5 weeks. I'm here talking to you guys. I'm not chewing my nails in anxiety. I'm actually working towards my degree, whereas I would have just had to find another online path or go to a school that's not really suited to my capabilities. But having this has helped me out so much. And seeing that it's in the state that it is really frightens me. I mean, Mark was mentioning how there's no one-on-one laptops. And I'm lucky enough to have a car, so I'm able to drive to campus and get my work done. Whereas there are some people with children or some people who can't pay for gas money. And then to not even be able to work on their schoolwork, which is marketed as an online forum, and not even have that access is really confusing to me. I mean, when I assumed that, I was like, you get the laptop. But then being like, you have to tell me, well, you have to be here to do it. And some kids, I've heard them talking, they couldn't do a class. They had to feed their kid or, actually have life, problems that they needed to work towards. And I think that this great resources that you guys have created needs to be improved so that so many more kids like me can have this ability to do this and say, hey, I went to iGrad. I fell down. I had a tough point in my life, but I did it. I got back up. And I went to iGrad, or I used this resource, and the KSD helped me. And I think right now we're at a good starting point, but it's going downhill. There are kids who can't even do the schoolwork when they're really wanting to, because some people view us as kids who gave up or who didn't really try hard. But in reality, we really are. We're really trying to do that. And as of right now, you guys are making that harder on us. And we really want to be able to get our degrees and help our communities and get more jobs and hopefully get in y'all's place. Be able to be superintendents or be on a board. And I hope you guys can help us with that. So, thank you.
Blanca Leiva Hernandez.
Hi, I used to go to iGrad. Right now, my sister actually goes to iGrad. I went to iGrad in 2011, and in 2014, I got pregnant, and I was still at iGrad. I went to iGrad, all the resources that were there, actually Kent Public Health Center would go to iGrad and educate the students about everything that teenagers go through, and as well as all the teachers, the vice principal, the social workers. There's so many staff and so many adults that care about these students, and I know that if it wasn't for them, I would not be a high school graduate. I graduated at 21, and so I was able to do that. But while I was in regular high school, I went to Kentridge, went to Kentwood, I went to KPA, just was not working for me. The attendance was horrible. I was happy enough that at iGrad, I always wanted to be there because of everyone that I was surrounded with. I ended up having a C-section with my son, so I was out of school for a while, got withdrawn, but they accepted me right back after, and then I got my gallbladder surgery. So it's been surgery after surgery, and every single time I come back, they're there just to pick me up. And the amount of support that you get at school and even outside of school, Samson, he emails us just like when we have jobs available for students. There's a lot of students that do have families that work, that help their families, that they don't have a car. And before iGrad, it used to be 8 to 8:30. There was kids that were always there from 5 to 8 p.m. trying to hustle and trying to get their work done. And then now that my sister goes there and I've graduated, I know now that the hours shrunk. And so not a lot of students are able to go within the hours that they're limiting them to do. So I do hope that you find it in your hearts to somehow keep iGrad alive, because it really does help a lot of students that have very different lifestyles, but at the same time, they're dealing with the same emotions. They're dealing with confusion, where they want to go in life. And the teachers and all of the staff there really do guide everyone to get where they want to go. So I really do hope that iGrad stays open for all those students. I work at Bloodworks, and I'm going to start going to Ren Tech for medical assistant. And I know the 2-year program that they have for Green River after you finish with iGrad, I know so many people that graduated from there. So it really is a beautiful opportunity for students that are confused and that feel like regular high school does not work for them for whatever reason, that they have that option that they could go to iGrad and know that it's basically family. They're going to help you and they're always going to pick you up. So thank you.
We really thank you, students, for staying and speaking with us. Thank you for coming. All right, we will move on to our Board of Directors discussion and approval. And the first item on the list is our superintendent performance evaluation goals. I'd like to ask for a board member to make a motion to approve the superintendent performance evaluation goals.
I move that we approve the superintendent evaluation goals.
All right, is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
All right, a motion has been made to approve the superintendent evaluation goals. Are there any discussions or questions?
Clarification, we've seen this probably 5 or 6 times, different draft forms, I think we're version 6. Yes. My review, it includes everything that we talked about previously, including in the change notes as well as what's in there. I just wanted to ask if anybody else, if there's anything else they don't see that they expected to see.
I have some comments, but I'll wait till everybody else has spoken.
I thought what I had was captured, so.
Okay, okay. Karen?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No,
so the one thing that, I know we're approving the goals tonight, but I know the one thing we had talked about in the past that I don't think we have finalized yet is the actual metric that we'll be using. We've talked about a couple of different things, but we've got some KPIs in here, but we haven't talked quite about what that metric would look like, you know, what the actual scale is. So I think at some time after we approve this, we still need to have that conversation.
That was based on our standards based.
Right, but it was in there, did it actually say, okay, yeah, I'll go back and look at it then. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay. All right, my question was really, I don't need a response or change, but I had brought up the whole issue of special ed, and so I thought a little bit further about it, and I think we can capture that metric under the fiscal recovery task force at some point. So I'm good with what I see. And so let's see.
Yeah, my notes from Dr. Harmon are all the updates that we talked about were included in the draft.
Yes, she did a thorough job of pulling those out. I appreciate that. So we would like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. Next step is 5.02, our Fiscal Recovery Task Force Action Plan. So I'd like to ask for a board member to make a motion to approve the Fiscal Recovery Task Force Plan, please.
I move that we approve the Fiscal Recovery Task Force Action Plan.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, a motion has been made to approve our Fiscal Recovery Task Force Action Plan. And I'd like to ask the board for any discussions or questions. And we'll begin with Karen, Director DeBruler.
And I know I've been gone, and this last week. I thought that, this is a final rather than a draft? Because I don't remember ever seeing this in its finality or when it was in a draft form.
Well, we discussed, okay, just to respond, we discussed 3 drafts, and the final action plan was to the only major change there was to make sure that we captured what Mr. Eric had said would be reviewed and not the 5% policy. So that's the only change from all of the other drafts that we've reviewed.
Okay.
Now, I do want to mention that we have some conventions that need to be corrected, grammatical issues, but if we're good with approving as is, then we should move forward, and we'll make those convention changes, and that will not change the intent of those statements that are already in place.
Yeah.
Can I ask I don't know, Ross, did you have something, or?
Well, just to clarify, because I know that it may not be all the details we don't necessarily need to work out. I think that we've put in there what we need, which is, the broad statement of the 5% year-end fund balance is too broad and maybe even not even that specifically important as we look forward. But when we look at our charge and task and our scope of authority, I think that's in the right mindset to help. The idea is not necessarily for us 5 to take this forward as a task force, but really to get the community and whoever's in the composition, to get them involved and have them take it forward. And so that I prefer that doing sooner than later. And so having this done now, and then we can have them form and particularly change some of their stuff as they go along.
Thank you.
So I just had a couple of clarifications. So under membership, where it does list the district director of finance, and then down below where it says, I think that's on page 2 of 4, and then when we go down, it says 3 staff members and administrative KSD staff. Would the director of finance be that administrator? Are we looking for an additional administrator KSD staff member?
So the first part where we talk about the minimum is we're talking about the minimum. So we talk about a director of finance there. The composition we talked about on August 9th was, we would have staff member there, and that would be the finance person. We didn't clearly state that because it's something that I think the task force would determine who that would be. Would it be a designee or somebody who would be regularly advising or partnering with the task force?
I just wanted to see if we were calling it out there, if we meant it for it to be down there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my only other question was on the criteria for selection of committee members. Number 2, because I know one of the things we said is we wanted students, and is the financial and or management and or legal expertise to understand, is that we're not, my fear is with just the way it's worded, it could preclude a student unless we're saying the experience and ability. So it's,
That's where it's captured.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's what we were saying. So we're not excluding anybody from that. We would prefer that people had that, but it's not, if you do not have that, you would not be excluded from the conversation.
No, and I would add, we had this discussion with Tim, and that is that a student who is part of ASB, for example, would have some exposure, and we don't expect them to have legal expertise.
I just wanted to make sure for clarification.
So, and we could make it clear in the application part, whatever areas that need clarification, we can do that still in the application part.
Yep, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. I do want to just emphasize the scope of authority. I want to make sure that it is very clear that this task force will be assisting the board in a financial advisory role. It is not a decision-making role. And it is also not the intent of the task force to partake in the day-to-day operations and decisions of the district administration, nor is it the intent of the committee to address state school funding issues. So it is a broad, we are asking that given our financial situation in the last several months, we are asking that the primary task be the protection and looking at the protection and the use of our general fund compared to our other funds. But there are going to be other metrics that will be discussed, and some of it the board will bring up. You know, special ed, for example, may come up. Some of them the staff will say is a priority, but it will be up to the task force to kind of review those metrics and also pay attention to how our general fund is being used. So that will be if everybody has, if you have interest, the plan itself is on our website and on our BoardDocs site, and we will have an application. We're still determining the timeline for the application. There will be a couple of screeners from a previous Citizens Budget Advisory Committee that will be looking at these applications and presenting the applicants to the board for us to be able to appoint. And then there will be a press release that would go out seeking these particular professionals that we would like to have for this task force. So that's the process, and if there are no more discussions, I would like to ask a board member to make a motion. Oh, no, we already did that. Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. Next up, 5.03, inclusive education out-of-district placement contracts for Overlake Specialty School, please. I'd like to ask for a board member to make a motion to approve our Overlake Specialty School contract.
I move that we approve 5.03 for out-of-district placement contracts.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, a motion has been made to approve 5.03, the inclusive education out-of-district placement contracts for Overlake Specialty Schools. Are there any discussions or questions?
Yes, I have one if no one else does. General questions, we look at out-of-district placements that I've said before. Have we used Overlake Specialty School before? Is this a continuing placement? Is this a new placement? They're quite a distance away. Are we certain that this is the best placement for these two students?
Great questions. Yes, so these are renewals. We have two students there now, currently a third grader and a seventh grader. This particular place is a really good partner with Kent in that they are always looking at ways to bring children back to Kent, and so that's a good partnership, and that's their goal. These are for students that have some pretty severe behaviors and are high functioning and typically autistic, and so that's our children with autism. So that's the type of student we see that attend Overlook.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? No. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. Moving on to 5.04, resolution number 1552, cancellation of warrants. Would a board member make a motion, please, to approve?
I move that we approve Resolution 1552, authorizing the cancellation of warrants.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
All right, a motion has been made to approve resolution number 1552, cancellation of warrants. Are there any discussions or questions? All right, here.
Oh, well, sorry. I was debating whether to call it a
Okay,
question or discussion. Seems we just do this in annual. I just want to make sure that we're doing this because, you know, it's just a general, it seems like it's an administrative RCW-led thing. There's no other specific action prompting us to cancel these warrants. Just kind of an administrative cleanup every year.
That's correct. That's what Dr. Harmon put in her notes.
Okay, all right.
That's okay.
So
Thank
we
you.
don't need to take a vote, or what are we saying?
We do.
We do need to take a vote, though. Yeah. Okay, so no other discussions, questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. We are up to our 6.0 consent agenda, and we have a couple of cards, a couple of speakers to our consent agenda. So before we move to that, I will call on Leslie Hamada, Veronica Smith, KSM, to speak to 6.06, our Big History Project grant, please.
Thank you, Superintendent Watts, President Vengadassalam, and members of the board. My name is Veronica Smith Qasim. I live near Carriage Crest, where I have a 6th grader. I also have a 9th grader at KR. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Big History Pilot Project. First, I have a really big caveat. My kid actually really likes the Big History course, and we both think the teacher is awesome. So my concerns here today are not about the merits of the class, but about the process by which it is almost de facto becoming adopted. I've been here before. I'm the lady with the signs, and I come with a theme. Tonight's theme is Ask the Questions, and I'll be coming back to that several times later because I'm on the agenda for, not the agenda, but planning to speak at public comment later tonight too. So first, take a little journey back with me in time to June 2014. You were presented with a school improvement plan at a work session. In that, the plan was a slide that notes Big History Project as an example of an innovative curriculum and mentions something about piloting it in 3 schools. Then fast forward with me through time by 2 years, we get to the very first meeting of the 9th grade curriculum adoption committee. At least some people present at that meeting got the impression that the district had already selected and wanted to begin piloting the Big History Project. So here's the first question to ask. Did the district improperly bypass the normal process for selecting and recommending the pilot of the Big History Project? Now move ahead in time with me to the start of last school year. It was the first year of the pilot project. Policy 2020 requires that a field test form be on file when you're piloting a project. I'm asking you to ask the question, does one exist? 2 months after the pilot began, you approved a 1-year grant to conduct a pilot program. Yes, the pilot began before the program had funding. So another question to ask is, what was the district's funding plan before the grant was awarded and accepted? Additionally, did the district use all the grant money received as described in the grant document? Was any money spent beyond what was provided by the grant? Ask the questions. Right before you approved that 1-year grant, you asked district staff questions for about 10 minutes. You had really good questions, but they weren't thoroughly answered. I've summarized your questions, and the answers are in this document right here, which I'm passing to you now. I urge you to follow up on the items in bold as you consider approval for the new 2-year grant tonight. Now let's switch gears and talk about district policy related to field testing. The policy I mentioned earlier says that field testing is okay for a reasonable amount of time. I'd say 1 year is probably a reasonable amount, but here's the question for you. Is another 2 more years, totaling 3 years altogether, still reasonable? Further, the policy says that in order to continue or expand a field test beyond a reasonable time, the formal process must be followed. Have we reached that threshold already? I'll leave that up to you. I know my time's about out, so I'm just going to say lastly, if you separate that question from the field test question, policy 2019
allows a school to waiver out of the standard curriculum in favor of an alternative curriculum, at what point would you say the district has moved from a long-term field test, at this point 1 year, looking up to 3 years, to an alternate curriculum? Please hold the district accountable. Before you approve anything tonight, ask the questions.
Leslie?
Are we ready to go?
Oh, sorry, yes, Leslie, you're speaking to the 6.10 project budget closeouts. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Van Godasselen, board members, Dr. Watts and Ms. Hawley. Today, as in most Wednesdays, I interviewed 8 families, individuals for emergency assistance at my church, Kent United Methodist, a program that I have directed for over 10 years. You look into the faces of people who are struggling to meet basic needs, housing and utilities, just basics. For 6 years, I served on the Community Accountability Board in Kent for the Washington State Board of Corrections. You see the faces of individuals coming out of incarceration. This is a constant reminder to me the opportunities and fulfillment of good education is a live and well problem. Today, I'm asking for full accounting of the expenditures and revenue, including grants, that iGrad has received in the last completed school year. Objective, to see if it is financially sustainable on its own. Second, once those numbers appear and are transparent, let's include the community in a conversation on moving forward on any changes to programming. There is an old African proverb that comes to mind. If you wish to go fast, go alone. If you wish to go far, go together. I'd appreciate hearing from Mr. Rarick on the results of that. I want to applaud him on his communication of answering one of my emails within 24 hours. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Now, we will ask the board if they would like to pull an agenda item for the discussion on our consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull?
Yeah, hang on, there's a question on it. 6.09.
Okay.
And I have more, 6.03, 6.05. Let's do 6.06 and then 6.10 as well.
Director Strauss, any?
No, I think that covered the ones I had.
All right. So, I'd like to ask for a board member to make a motion to approve consent agenda minus
Yep, got it.
6.03, 05, 610, 9.
I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda less 6.03, 6.05, 6.06, 6.09, and 6.10.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. A motion has been made to approve the consent agenda minus 6.03, 05, 06, 6.10, and 6.09. Are there any discussions or questions? And hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. And now we'll begin with 6.03. Director Hardy, please.
The questions relate to the same questions I had last time. In 6.3 and 6.05 combined, no, we had tentative agreements with KOP and with Teamsters. Just want to verify that they individually have ratified these agreements and agree with them, and basically we are the final step to approve.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. That was all I needed, just that confirmation.
All right, 6.05.
Same question.
Okay.
Answered.
6 and 10.
Ooh, 6.06. Well, I will pick a question that I like from this list here. So I do want to know, there was a question asked last time, about a year ago, that was unanswered. We talk about this going from field test to wider curriculum, specifically with the big history project, either what we talked about last time and what we're talking about now. What committee makes that final decision, and how do they do that?
Okay, good evening, board. So we do have an instructional materials committee, following the board policy 2020P, we do follow those guidelines for making decisions regarding curriculum. Just from my notes, looking at the historical records about how this transpired, it appears that there was a decision made to continue the field tests because there wasn't enough data to make a decision whether or not to fully adopt the curriculum. So the field test was extended for 2018-19 and 2019-2020.
And the field test covers what areas? Groups, classes, what we're talking about?
The field test is going, so do you want to know what data we're going to look at to measure? Okay, so there will be an essay that's really going to look at the historical writing, reasoning evidence, the ability for students to demonstrate their understanding of the historical resources that they're reviewing. That will happen at the beginning of the course as baseline information. Then it also happens mid-year and end of year. There's also perception data that's collected from students and teachers that will be used to kind of inform whether or not this is the right and appropriate curriculum to adopt.
A little bit different question. See that our grant is funded by an entity called BGC3. Have we received grants from this entity before? Is this the first time ongoing grant?
I am familiar with the Big History Grant, so I'll have to do some research on that if this is the only grant that we've received from this organization. So this is a continuation of the original grant.
Right, so yeah, so that continuous grant, I guess I want to know, is there anything else that this organization or affiliated organizations, entities, whatever they organize themselves as, are involved in the other grants with the Kent School District?
I'll have to do some research on that. I'll have to reach out to our finance team and our office that sort of handles the grants to see if we have any other affiliations with this organization.
Thank you.
All right. I have a question on 6.06. But I will be abstaining from making a decision because one of the funders, I have worked for the funders, so I need to not vote. But I do have a question on, let's see, the question I asked years ago before I worked for the funder about the clashing of this program with the 8th grade ancient history. And I know at the time there was a discussion and that somebody would be looking into that or thinking about it, but have you found anything?
So that's the first time I've heard that question, but it's certainly something I can take back and respond later. And let you know if that has been looked at specifically. Could you provide a little more detail regarding the clashing with 8th grade?
There were some comments, negative comments from teachers and students who've said that the Big History Project clashes with that of 8th grade ancient history, or it's a duplicate, or some concern that, and the response was that the AP World History does that also, but it didn't really answer the question, so.
Now, I wonder if I may, President Vengadoslam, if it is an overlapping of curriculum, either content, and typically that is not out of the realm of possibility when we're speaking about social studies and history. If we think about what happens in time, there may be perceptions, different perspectives, but the events themselves may overlap. So I think Nell has mentioned she would look into the matter with those who've had perhaps a greater level of context, and we'll provide some response to your questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, 6.10, Director Hardy, project budget closeout. Oh, sorry, 6.09.
No, sorry.
Director DeBruler.
Yeah.
Jumping, roadmap region early math implementation. Pardon me.
Yeah, I'm always happy to see pre-K emphasis on math particularly, but is it just the preschools that we work with? Or this is not an outreach to community private preschool teachers?
It is an outreach. It is inclusive of all of our pre-K programs that would feed into Kent schools. And one of the things I'm really excited about with this particular grant, in the past, this was a funded position from PSESD, where they provided the person who would provide those resources. That person moved on, I think, to an administrative position. They had been unable, through their advertising, to find someone else to step into that role. And our math team, we've had some conversations just looking at our overall math data. And early intervention is critical. And our team has really organized themselves in a way and worked with PSCSD and the Gates Foundation to kind of support this grant and allocate our resources internally to make sure that we can continue to not only provide that support to all of our pre-Ks in the area, but to begin to build our internal capacity so that we can continue to facilitate this program, even if the funds are no longer available. So really we're working on sustainability.
Good. That's good. Thank you.
6.10, Director Hardy.
And this is, sorry, on to 6.10. You can talk about capital budget closeouts if you like to know. But, so normally we do change orders for this, but this is the end, so you're asking for a little bit extra money just to close out these projects. It's about $70,000. What I want to know is if you can estimate what % of the overall project cost is that? Are we talking less than 3%? Are we talking 10%? How much is this extra to close out these projects?
I would have to get back to you on the exact numbers for that. I would think that they're under 5% because our undistributed costs on most of these budgets were probably at that range.
Yeah.
So, and these actually were not 2016 bond projects. These were added projects.
Okay.
So this is why it wasn't pulled from contingency always when it's
Right.
not a project.
Let's pull it from line, just know.
That's correct.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, since we have one abstention, 6.06, I'll call the others first. So I'd like to call for a vote on Oh, I need a motion.
So I'll do a motion.
Thank you.
I move that we approve 6.03, 6.05, 6.09, and 6.10.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
All right, a motion has been made to approve 6.03, 6.05, 6.09, and 6.10 from the consent agenda. Now I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. Next.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve 6.06.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve 6.06 from the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Yes, I'd like to abstain, and the motion passes. All right. So we are moving to 7.0 informational, and that is our first one is our procedure 5111P employment revised. We are not seeking approval, just informational. Are there any questions or discussions? Hearing none, we'll move on to 7.02 procedure 5320P personnel leaves. Are there any questions or discussions? Hearing none, we are moving on to 8.0 communication from the audience. And we have several cards. We will begin with, please forgive me if I mispronounce your names. Cedra Wanley, Samson Tekle, Ron DeLay, Liz Christie, and we have more. I'll name the others soon. Thank you, Cedra. Please.
Okay. So I used to go to iGrad my junior year of high school. I think iGrad is a great school because of all the different types of programs they have to help you succeed in many different ways. I was able to finish school on time and graduate with my class in 2017 because of iGrad. One of my favorite aspects was that school was open from 8 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Now the hours have been cut down from 8 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is, I find that it's very inconvenient and inconsiderate. There are students who work in those times of the day, so they won't be able to make it in time to go to school and finish any type of schoolwork during the week. Sometimes schools like KPA and Kent Mountain View Academy aren't a great option, which is where iGrad comes in. There are students who won't be able to attend Kent Mountain View because you're required to be in the Kent School District to go to Kent Mountain View, and there are students who won't be accepted into KPA, where as iGrad, mostly everyone gets accepted. Even after I graduated, they've been there for me to help me complete my career goals. To this day, I drop in every once in a while to speak with Samson, the social worker, right here at iGrad. And that shows how much iGrad really helped me because it's been almost a year and a half and I still go there. And yeah. Like many other students, I've been able to change my narrative, and now I attend Pima Medical Institute, and I'll be finishing school within the next few months as a registered dental assistant. So.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Samson Tekle, the social worker at iGrad. I definitely want to just congratulate or just give thanks to the students who came in here today. Many of them graduated, some of them are current students, but they came in here on their own. I really want to give a shout out to Mark because if it wasn't for the civics class he just went through, to really just learn about democracy and just kind of speaking up for yourself, he wouldn't be here today. And I think I was big on him because he literally every day he would make speeches in the classrooms to just tell the students that they have a voice. So definitely congratulate Mark on that. And now here comes the sad piece. Mariah, you gave a great presentation on retention, but I got to tell you, I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of having to fight an uphill battle for students to get a better education or to continue on with their education. I'm sick and tired that I have to feed students, frozen sandwiches because, I'm saying that's what they're getting. I'm sick and tired of having to figure out other ways to support students in ways that the Kent School District should already be doing so. I feel like there needs to be more. I wanted to quit my job a few times, but what kept me there is all the students who come in there every day to just kind of continue their goals and to continue doing what they need to do. I hear so many sad stories on just kind of what's going on in their lives, abuse, homelessness, but every day they still come in to fight that battle. And if they can do it, why can't I? And so I was here last year, gonna be here again just because there continues to be rumors about iGrad not being here next year. And while that's okay, we can all find other jobs. What about the students? What about the students? Why are we always making decisions about them without them? Why can't we hear them for a second? It's tough to talk. You know, one of the toughest things I had to do was talk to some of the same students about speaking up on this issue. A lot of them, they did that. They came in here, they spoke, they told you everything, but nothing happened. We cut the hours at iGrad. We lost our assistant principal. So what are they supposed to do? Like, is their voice really not that? Dr. Watson, I'm not trying to call you out, of course. I think you're a great man. But you say that every kid every student is your child, right? Well, we can't just keep saying that. We got to act on that. We have to do what's best for them. And maybe it's not just you. Maybe it's everyone who needs to adapt that morale. But I feel that's so important. And so hopefully this will be the beginning to more conversations about that. Maybe at the community relations quarterly meetings. Is that correct? So maybe we can continue those conversations, but please be prepared for those because we need answers. I'm not going to keep on telling you students that, I'm saying there's a possibility of school ending because I'm going to make sure that they're fighting towards that. And, I'm saying, and just fighting for their dreams just like everyone else did when they were younger to achieve that. So thank you very much, guys.
Hello, my name is Ron DeLay. This is my, I think, third time talking to you. I'm a spec ed teacher at iGrad, and where we have, incidentally, about, as of today, 45 spec ed students. A great thing came out today. We heard that this last year we had 47 GED kids complete their GED, which is if you look around Seattle, nobody matches that. And so that's something to be very proud of. I wanted to thank the board, by the way, for holding your info meetings, but I would like to invite you to come over and meet with the staff and students too at iGrad, because I don't really think you have the whole story. And certainly from the latest thing in the on the web page where it says that iGrad services will be shifting to a hub model as a center for connecting students for best pathways next year, which will not require classrooms or classroom space, but rather meeting space for students and families to connect with iGrad staff and outside partners. As a spec ed teacher, as a former administrator, I find this hub model alarming. And I would really like to have a sit down with all the players, including the administrators who are making this happen, because it's alarming on many levels. And I have a tremendous background in this area, and I've read all kinds of dissertations who use that set of catchwords, and I can share at another time why that's alarming to me. But anyway, I think we need to take a look at this. The final thing is that I wanted to speak to, and this is, I call it my Liam Neeson moment. I have a set of skills that are really, really good, because I used to do complaint investigations for special education for the state of Alaska. And I used to put fires out all the time as well in my administrative thing. So I really know how to light fires under people and so on. And I think we're at a point with the tech bond business where we have a great opportunity as a teaching moment for our students. And I will tell you that waiting for the tech bond to come over to iGrad, I'm through waiting. So what I will do is use my skill level and go through the administrative remedies required by the board policy, and then move on through there until we either get the administrative remedies or until we move to either OCR complaints or complaints with OSEP, Office of Special Education, for the feds. But it's time for us to ante up. We are not supposed to be the answer that we are self-sustaining as iGrad, and so we don't have the one-on-one computers for kids, that's the wrong answer. So I just want to let you know that it's time for us to get an administrative remedy for this, or we will carry it on, and I will be one to do that. And I really am skilled in that area. So Please come through with one-on-one computers and the tech bond stuff for iGrad. Okay? Thank you.
Next up is Liz Christie, followed by Deanne Fuller, Morgan Allen, Alexander Hune, and Veronica Smith Kasem again. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on a program that has helped some of our most vulnerable students. I speak on behalf of iGrad and express my disappointment in the decision and direction that you have authorized. I want to believe that this is misguided decision as the result of a misunderstanding of the needs of the students and the profound services provided to the students by the amazing staff at iGrad. Unfortunately, I'm unable to give you the grace as this decision represents a long line of misguided decisions from the board and this administration. It is troubling that prior to this decision, and as you heard tonight, that those who created this plan failed to truly understand iGrad and instead looked at it merely as a debt. You were willing to discard the program as it was, place it in the trash, and reinvent it without even truly understanding the unique needs of the students of this program. No one took the time to truly understand. I have heard from board members that iGrad is costing money. I ask you to prove it. I have scoured the budgets for the last few years, and interesting, program service expenditures went from $1.3 million the last few years to $200,000 this year. It's important to remember that Open Doors is basic education. It's fully funded. That means that the staff is funded, and you can go through your 179-page budgets and you see all of the staffing. You can go each month through the allotments and you can see all of the staffing. And you can see the Running Start iGrad money that you get that's going to Green River Community College. And so I ask, when this program is receiving approximately $2.3 million from the state, and Miss Cleveland and her amazing grant writing skills and community buildings is bringing in 1.3, do we really have a budget issue? Do you even know if what you have been told is true? I also want to educate you on the unique circumstance that need to be considered with iGrad. There's a reason why this program is referred to as Open Doors. For many of these students, the door to education closed for them for many different issues and many different situations. And when a door opens, and when a door closes, another one opens. And Miss Cleveland and her team are there with hugs, support, love, food, and mentoring to help these students get through high school. And you heard the effect that they have on these students. I can't imagine, for some reason, why we would think that placing them back into high schools would be a good idea, and why we think that hubs would be a good idea. It didn't work the first time. They failed the traditional school, and now you want them to go back to the halls in which they failed in before. You also cut the hours this year. I'm not listening to your timer. This makes it nearly impossible for my nephew to meet the in-person requirements. Again, if traditional schools and their hours worked, these kids would not be in this program. My call to action is this. I know that grant money is unaccounted for. I want a complete accounting external audit of this program, and I want you to show me where the debt is. I ask that no changes be made to iGrad until this administration actually considers these children and determines their actual needs, not the needs that you think they have. And I demand that Ms. Cleveland be given her assistant principal back. She has the funding, the students need her, and the hours need to be opened.
Deanne Fuller, thank you.
Hi, my name is Deanne Fuller. I'm a concerned citizen, taxpayer, and also an employee of the Kent School District. As I've been sitting here, I've noticed some members, board members, rolling their eyes and not happy with the tone that people have taken to the board members. You put out a lot of work and you have a lot of stuff that you have to look over, and I truly appreciate the job that you're doing. It's just really frustrating to be at iGrad, and I was here last year, and we just ask questions. We just want to know our fate. And an email came out about KPA and KMVA, and they're getting an academy site. Our name is iGrad Academy, and we are nowhere to be found in that email. We're asked not to spread rumors or to speculate, and we ask questions, and we ask questions, and there's no response. So the only speculation we can come to is that you're closing iGrad, unless we hear something differently. As was spoken before, our budget holds our own. We don't understand what is the purpose of closing iGrad. I know there's budget questions that they've said just can't be answered. Grant money that has been lost and cannot be found. I'm here for the students of iGrad, and I'm here to ask these questions because I know when a question is asked that you do your best to answer it. 1, will iGrad students still be able to be enrolled in KSD programs, not just partner programs like Green River? Will iGrad become a hub model where we will just farm out our students to other districts so Kent will no longer have to take responsibility for these students in our communities? Is iGrad blending with KMVA and KPA? If so, will all admin and teacher personnel still maintain their current positions or their current at their current school? Is there a time frame for letting staff members know what is happening to iGrad? Number 5, when will iGrad be notified of our fate for next year? People are making plans behind the scenes. That's obvious with KMVA and KPA. We're a school who have students there, and our students need consistency and support, and we have no answers to give them. I beg of you to give us an answer and tell us what our fate is for next year. Thank you.
Morgan Allen.
We know nothing.
Not here.
We don't.
Oh, what's the person? Okay, Alexander Hume. Okay. And Veronica Smith Casey.
I'm Veronica Smith Kasem. I spoke earlier this evening. My topics tonight are iGrad and special ed. iGrad has been really well covered here, so I'm not going to repeat all those parts, but I do want to talk about process. Recent program changes were announced at a community conversation, and that's a really informal forum, but I guess the district made it official by putting it on their website. My question for you, the question you should be asking is that how we're making announcements now, like on a side page down several layers on community conversations? And is that okay with you? It's not okay with me. I'm going to move on to special ed. I heard that at a recent community conversation, a board member said she was not aware of any district failures to deliver special ed services so far this year. I've also heard that's not true. You need to ask the questions. Call transportation and ask them how many special needs students missed school so far this year because no one was coordinating a bus for them. How many days of school were missed? Call inclusive ed. I just want to call this out. With so many unfilled school psych positions and special ed teachers, are IEP evaluations being done according to federal timelines? Are special ed teachers providing and overseeing IEP service minutes as required? Maybe the district hasn't told you about these things, but please find out, ask the questions, and also put out a call to the community and ask them the same questions because they have a lot to share. I just have to add one other thing, which is not originally on my list. You heard tonight that a decision to continue the Big History pilot was happening because they didn't have enough data. You missed an opportunity to hold the district accountable on On November 8th, 2017, you, Director DeBruler, asked a very good question. You asked how this program would be assessed. You were told that they would use assessments of 2 performance assessments throughout their, and in addition, they would compare that information from the Big History program to the assessments of the students who did the core program, and they would compare those two. You were told tonight that that's exactly what they're going to do. They said they were going to do that last year. You missed a chance to hold them accountable. Why are you giving the district a pass? Thank you.
All right, we are moving on to our legislative update with Director Hardy, please.
Yes, thank you. I have 2 brief updates regarding the legislative. One is, where the WASDA had their legislative agenda setting priorities, so that's still working together. WASDA also has regional meetings, so as the state's broken up into regions, it's not easy to get together. We're part of Region 2. That meeting is this Saturday. Separately, actually, all the legislative representatives are attempting to get together and communicate in Region 2 regarding what our positions are, what our legislative positions are from the district, what we support from the WASDA level, and how to go forward with that. That's a forthcoming event, so I'll have something in the future regarding what we talk about. And the other, the other was only a lot of the legislative actions haven't gone forward because we don't necessarily know what our legislature will look like. We will know fairly soon. So more to come after the elections in a couple weeks when that's set, and then we can start approaching the people who will be in the legislature and be seated for next year. So this calls out, if you have a legislative priority or legislative update that you don't see, send it to me. I'll bring it to the Region 2 is, it's all of us around. It's does include Seattle, but it's, Renton, Tukwila, all of us around here. We're getting together and looking at our legislative positions. So if you have one, feel free to send it to me. I can include it. And that concludes my legislative update for today.
Thank you. All right. Start with Director Strzok. Oh, Dr. Watts. Sorry, Dr. Watts.
No apologies needed. Thank you, President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Ms. Halley, community members, staff, family, friends. It pains me to share this first announcement that occurred today. When we think about our own Team KSD members and from a family standpoint, I want to take this personal point of privilege to say thoughts and hearts go out to Dr. Mary Newell's family. Mary Newell served as our coordinator of nursing services, and she passed away today. She served as a member of Team KSD for more than 17 years. Mary was an advocate for all children. As I grew to know her as a person, as a leader, and I shared with her early and often about the fact that she was as my mom's namesake, a nurse, a true servant leader. She was passionate about the Green Bay Packers. Her general concern for all members of Kent School District was widely known, and we will miss her. And I wanted to make sure that I pay my respects to her and on behalf of Kent School District for her service to this community. More details will be shared as we know more about how to honor her life as a member of Team KSD. With regard to communication, that's a theme that is often a part of this work. We can't lead, we can't teach, we can't learn without communication, and we know it is a continuous work in progress. Our goal is to continuously improve. We know there are efforts where we fall short. We know there are efforts where we succeed, and we must continue to do that. One example where we are working to continuously improve our communication is through a digital platform known as Peach Jar. Many of our school districts in the nation, organizations in the nation, use this platform to communicate to our school, to our communities, and it essentially is creating a digital version of flyers that, and I remember as a child with a backpack, sometimes things that went home from school rarely found their way out of my backpack until months later. And what this platform will allow us to do is to communicate information from schools to home electronically by phone or by desktop, but to communicate digitally and also to be good stewards of our environment. And what digital platform of Peach Jar also allows us to do is to monitor how many trees we are actually saving. For those who don't know, if you place literally five reams of paper on top of one another, that is the equivalent of one tree. And so far, with the use of Peach Jar, we have saved enough paper to save 5 trees. Now, that may mean a great deal to some, it may mean very little to others. More importantly, what this does also mean is how we communicate with those who may not have access to wireless internet at home or a place of residence. And we have a plan to support our families, regardless of their area of need. For those who have phones, you can access digital platform to receive these documents on your cell phone, and you may not have, if a family member does not have access at home, they would have access either at school or in a place where there is a wireless cloud. We also have a plan to make sure there is a digital device dedicated at each one of our schools, where it's a common public location where family members can gain access to that information. We also have part of that plan to make sure that paper will not be completely eliminated. We will make sure that there will be at least minimal amounts of hard copies at a specified location at each one of our schools so that families who do rely on paper products can still have access. But our goal is to continue to communicate more effectively and efficiently. I'm wearing orange today. For those who are wearing orange, know that we are recognizing National Bullying Prevention Month. And as we think about how our students and the adults who serve them, how we care about one another, how we come to school, whether taking the bus, eating breakfast, after school programs, or receiving support from our amazing teachers and support staff, our leaders of our schools, principals and assistant principals. The goal is to make sure that we come to school and we know each other first as an individual, then as a learner. And what bullying does, as we've seen before, whether it's on television or whether it's in our schools or whether it's in our communities, it is, unfortunately, it is a reality where we have individuals who attempt to gain power by taking the power from others. And what we often think about is empathy. We've talked a great deal about equity this evening, but equity cannot happen without empathy first. And what I mean by that is when you know someone, when you care enough to understand who someone is by imagining yourself walking in their shoes, when you care enough to know how someone else might be feeling, given their role, responsibility, their conditions in life, and we're listening and hearing of what was shared with us today. Empathy is a part of our work. Then we can help address needs based on those individual needs, and that is what equity means. So as we celebrate National Bullying Prevention, our goal is that we don't have to celebrate this ever again. We want to put this celebration out of business. But until then, we will recognize this by wearing orange and spreading empathy towards every member of our community. And speaking of community, I trust that we'll be able to answer some of the questions that have been posed this evening on November 6th and 8th, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., and November 10th, 10:30 to 12, 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. on a Saturday. This is the community conversations, the next iteration that will be in more of a form of a town hall style format, where questions that that are posed will be responded to the extent that either I and/or staff have the information to share with you that evening. We certainly have the information and the individuals who will be there to address questions and specific comments or concerns. More information will be coming out by the end of this week, specific to the locations and the times, but I look forward to seeing each and every one of you who are here this evening. We invite those who still have questions or concerns to come out, and that won't be the last time that we have this opportunity to provide you with perhaps more answers than questions than what we have this evening. I look forward to working alongside each and every one of you. Let's enjoy each other's company, take good care with empathy and equity in mind, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Watts.
Thank you.
Director Strauss.
So first of all, I'd like to thank all those who have hung out with us for this long evening tonight. I appreciate you being here and for your time and for your comments. I had the opportunity to attend the KAC PTA meeting on Monday, and in one of the things that they went over in that meeting was the Kent Area Council. If you don't know KAC, it's Kent Area Council PTA, what their legislative priorities are for WASDA. And so I wanted to share those, at least the top 5, because there's ways that we can partner together on that. Their number 1 was social and emotional learning. Number 2 was school construction, and with the goal of getting a simple majority for bonds. Number 3 was the prevention of gun violence. Number 4 were strategies to address teacher shortage. And number 5 was strategic K through 12 investments to close achievement gaps. So those were their top 5. So I thought it was important for us to know that, so that there's ways that we can certainly partner. PTA was very instrumental in getting the simple majority passed for levies. It took years, but I think it's something we can help them with. I'd also like to thank those who came out. I had the opportunity to do 2 community conversations with Director Daniels, and I don't know if, given the time tonight, if we're going to go over those tonight, Maya, or for another time.
Yeah, 2 were there.
Yeah,
so
yeah, but it was a great opportunity to hear some of the concerns from our community. One of the things that came up was in regards to technology and how we're utilizing technology now that we have one-to-one in elementary schools. What's that looking like, and what is the plan for going forward as far as using technology in teaching? And I realized I didn't bring all my notes with me. That was the one that I know I heard in both. But we had other really good conversations about things that were happening in the district and concerns. So, thank you.
Director Hardy.
Yes, I recall that it's in the past 2 weeks we had our community conversations. You and I had one out at Kent Lake, and I thought we had a good conversation for the couple hours we were there. And one, we actually talked about something that we heard tonight on. So we talked about that perhaps there is an inequity in the who gets the technology upgrades from the levy and the bond, and how they're made available, and who can get them when they need them, iGrad specifically. And so making sure that that is a community concern we've been hearing for quite a while. And so we've got to figure out what that is and what to do about it. And also, I thought we had a real good conversation around, when we sit and we think about all the policies we put in place to protect our students, one of the things is also making sure we have policies or procedures in place to protect our teachers. In the classroom, specifically from anything that career impacts of things that happen. I know we specifically talked about, unfounded investigations and complaints and things like that, but that we've got to consider both sides. As we protect the students, we have to protect our teachers as well. So I thought we had a good conversation, though it was lightly attended, but of course going up against a very good band concert at the time, which we did get to listen to, so that was fortunate. And then I did want to put in a plug-in for the Special Education Advisory Committee, which has a meeting this coming Monday. They meet at TOP. I've been to several before. I won't be able to go to this one, but it's an important resource. I have 3 kids on IEPs, and it's an important resource to talk to other people, figure out what's going on, get the questions there from the people they bring believe this one is a dyslexia discussion, but I'd say go anyway, meet people. It's very important. I know it's on the district website, so the time and place I may not know, but it's Monday, and it's at top. And so something that I know they try to at least meet monthly, so looking forward to going to those in the future, so that those were good. And I think that'll conclude my report for today.
Thank you. All right. Well, I've been, I won't say out of the loop, but I've just been busy with family needs. I was really looking forward to the community conversations, and then with the last-minute family emergency, I couldn't do it. So I've been pulled in several different directions. I just got back from California for another family need. But I did attend the Kent Food Bank breakfast, and I enjoyed that, and I look forward to hearing. I don't know how much they actually collected, but I appreciate being able to support our students and their families. Just another plug for mentoring. It's very important. I'm definitely working with my two who are still in KSD, and my older two who are now registered to vote. This brings me to the next thing, who are now registered to vote. I helped them make sure that they voted in the last election. And I've sent them a picture of what the voters pamphlet looks like so that they watch for it in the mail, and I've warned them that their ballots are coming out. But it's really important that everybody vote. If you are a voter, if you have a student who's a voter, or you have a child who is a voter, or a parent, it's really important that they get their ballots turned in. So just a plug. That's our civic duty.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. All right. I will also just bring up on our community conversations. As you know, all of the questions were posted on the website. But one of the things that I want to bring up is that, in our decision to pay attention to timeline in responding quickly to our constituents, I think we fell short, and responding within a week rather than doing our due diligence and finding out some of the facts. I think we fell short there, and I think one of the things that we will need to do is that before responses go out, not prioritize the timeline so much as the content that we distribute or we put out to the public. And so I apologize for the information that is incorrect, but I do defend that process in that I think whenever something goes out on a website, that affords the opportunity for our constituents to question that. And if it's inaccurate, that affords an opportunity for you to come and tell us if it's inaccurate. So in that sense, I do think it's really important that we continue the process of having those conversations and posting what we're hearing and our response to it. So I don't feel like it's fluff or inaccurate information going on the website. As Dr. Watts said, we are in this process of continuous improvement, and we're not always going to get it right. But that the objective is not to hide anything. And I hear things on social media, well, the board is lying, this and that. But the intent is good. We want to make progress with our communication challenges. And so I just want to say that we'll continue to work on that. And, we've continued to work with our community on that, and would like to see all of you participate and not feel like this is not a genuine, effort on our part to improve on our communications. So that said, I want to thank a number of people. I want to thank all of those who were able to attend our Kent Food Bank fundraiser. We didn't raise as much. I think we fell short about $7,000. But thank you all for attending. I want to thank Mrs. Liz Jones at Meridian Elementary for letting me be a 7th grader for a day. What ended up happening was I became I got to watch 7th grade teacher for a day because I was stayed in the same classroom for the entire day. And I want to thank all our teachers for all that you do without a break, to see how much work you do without even a 45-minute lunch break. I mean, you're working throughout those 6 periods. So thank you to Ms. Jones. Thank you to Mr. Harper at Pine Tree Elementary. I was able to do a tour. Thank you to Principal Steiner for giving me a tour. I'll be going to Mr. Simpson's leadership class tomorrow. They're having a debate on bullying, so look forward to that. And then finally, I want to thank Ann McFarland from Jurassic Parliament for giving me a free session on parliamentary procedures. I mean, it is one of my dreaded things to do. I don't like formalities, and so there are a few changes that you're noticing in our meetings tonight, and maybe a few more that'll come up where we don't make mistakes, and that we are paying attention to how we carry it forward in parliamentary procedures. With that said, if there's no other comments, we are adjourned for tonight. Thank you all for coming.